these entrepreneurs, these solopreneurs, these disruptors. The day is filled with joy and happiness. So for those who are just joining and don't know anything about bLU, bLU stands for Business, Life, and the Universe. And these interviews are about amplifying their message. So sometimes we talk about the different ways that they've shared, like speaking, podcasting, writing. And sometimes we talk a lot about their stories and where these people have come from, because there's so much meaning behind the work that they do and the message that they have. So I am your host, Laura Lake. I host the show, but I also have my own business where I help changemakers and solopreneurs to courageously connect with their audience, which means if you're telling your story, I want to get to know the emotions behind the story so that they actually feel seen. All those subtleties that we like to just skim over, that's my specialty. So Christopher, I'd love to hear a little bit about you. And at the same time, I'm going to share the live in our private Facebook group.
Okay, I'm Christopher Lee Maher, and I'm the co-host. And I'm a change agent and very vested in my business model, coaching internationally and helping people bring their message forward into the world in a bigger way so they can add positive value to every life that they touch.
There. Like just enough time. It's perfect timing. So our first guest is behind the scenes. Donnie, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. Awesome. Donnie, welcome to the stage.
Hey, everyone. How y'all doing?
Good. I have to ask because there's text right in front of my face. Does your shirt say possible, possible, possible?
It says it's possible.
Oh, it's possible?
Yep, it's possible. So it's a shirt I had designed a while back. I was trying to go through like what is my mantra going to be. So this was one of them. It's possible. One of them, because as part of my story is kind of speaking to whoever I'm speaking to. The message is going to kind of be clear that no matter what you go through, it's possible to achieve things that you didn't think you were capable of at one time.
It's so funny that you said it's possible. It reminds me of a song, I want to say back in the early 2000s, where it's called Impossible. And what I did for one of the boot camps, the bLU Talks boot camps, was I changed the lyrics and I put my own lyrics in and I renamed it It's Possible. And it's all about storytelling. So I may have to send you that like behind the scenes just to see what you think.
I look forward to it.
Yeah, just because I like the coincidence, the synchronicities. But here's how I usually start an interview, just so I can shake things up a bit and get to know who you are.
Okay.
So Donnie, if you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
I would say a man of grit, a servant, and lastly, I probably would say determined.
Ooh, determined. Okay, so what do those 3 words, grit, servant, and determined, how do they play a role in the key message that you have for people?
Grit comes from, I look at it in 2 different ways. So I have an acronym for grit, and I also have the grit by definition based on how I feel about it. I feel grit is something that's in you. I don't think grit is just something that you can you can learn it, but most people already have it with inside of them. It's not that they have to learn it, it's that they have to learn themselves to know that they have the grit inside of them that can get them through anything, that can get them through the hard times, the bad times, so that's one side of it. Grit on the other side, the acronym side is the G for me is, God first. The R is a reason to wake up every day. The I is to have an imagination. As a child, we have a great imagination, but as life and our imagination kind of goes away. So, the imagination part, let's not forget that as adults. And the T is the tenacity, and the tenacity to take action. So, to go through the process, and then you learn yourself, and at the end, you don't take action, you just wasted a lot of time. So the success is in the action.
I can say I'm very guilty of that.
A lot of people are. I'm guilty of it as well. Trying to get better by the day.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love your acronym. I love that you took the time, meaning that you look at your life seriously, right? And
Mhm.
and you're living with purpose when you start creating your own acronyms. So with that, what are the things that what have you been through that you've had to apply grit in order to get on the other side?
That's a great question. So what most people know about me, I'm passionate about my family, especially my kids, being present emotionally and physically. Um, I'm a veteran, military veteran who had a successful transition to the government where I served in leadership positions to include the chief of staff for the president's brief for the director of national intelligence. They also may know I have 2 degrees. I have a bachelor's degree, I have a master's degree in strategic intelligence from the National Intelligence University. But what most people probably don't know about me is I grew up the child of an incarcerated father during a time where I need him the most. So
Mm,
that's kind of where my grit comes in. My mother was, and still is, always been a devoted Christian. So that's where my faith comes in. So I kind of have both sides of the spectrum. I have extreme faith, but also I have the streets of my father. So the grit comes in through that, and both sides of those played a part in my career, in my life, in my upbringing, my mentality that got me to where I'm at. So
Yeah.
that's where the grit part comes in at.
wow. So you leaned on God as your father.
So as far as well, I wouldn't say I lean on God as my father. My father was incarcerated, so I leaned on God to get me through that situation.
Mm,
But my father was incarcerated. Got incarcerated when I was in middle school.
mm,
So at that point, he was kind of a very charismatic guy. He demanded attention. He drove Mercedes, wore suits and gaiters. So to a family that looked more like a wanted poster than a family portrait, he was like a role model to everyone. So on the other hand, I had my mother, who was and still is like a dedicated Christian. So she tried to keep me in church and keep me away from the streets. And my father getting locked up in middle school, she worked at a warehouse, so she couldn't really afford to support us. So we had to move in with my grandmother, who had recently passed about an hour away from my home. Um, and that was kind of hard too, because I can still remember my grandmother in jail, and when we was in the hospital, she passed while watching my cousin being arrested for murder on Fox 5 News. So there I am,
mm.
probably 13 years old at that point. My father couldn't be there because he was incarcerated at the time. So, you know, we lived with my 2 cousins. My younger cousin, both of his parents was incarcerated, and my older cousin, who was adopted by my grandmother. So technically, he was my uncle, but we were in the same grade. So there's no way I was going to call him uncle. So he had been in and out of the juvenile system. So it's just really us because my mother was working double shifts in the warehouse and kind of grew up together. So he was selling drugs and in and out, and it got to the point where I got tired of being broke. So I joined the crew and started selling drugs and doing things that I thought was in my trajectory of life because that's all I knew growing up. And my mother working in the warehouse. I mean, you see your father driving Benz and your mother in the warehouse. Your father is more of the influence during that time. So that transitioned into smoking PCP, weed, alcohol. And when I was in high school then, so I'm probably around 14, 15 years old. When I graduated high school, I went to my grandmother's house who lived in Maryland, on my mother's side. That's the reasonable side of the family, the people with jobs and all the good stuff. But I'm still living off, being raised in a family of fellas. So when I get to my grandmother's house, I decided I wanted to go to Virginia and visit an old girlfriend. Well, we stopped at a store that went south, and the police came. I ended up catching this. I woke up in a jail cell to find out that I caught a felony assault and battery on the police. I was high off PCP and didn't even remember the night before. So I'm in jail. And I'm thinking to myself at this point, once the fear of being incarcerated is no longer a fear, then you really got a problem. So I'm in jail and I'm thinking to myself, like, this ain't too bad. At this point, I really don't care. Life is just not life. It's life, and it's really life right now. So I get to the point where I'm just like, it's whatever. So a few weeks later, maybe a month or so, it's my court date. So I'm walking in, I'm pretty fully prepared to accept whatever happens. Probably couldn't get no more than a couple of years. In my head, family members doing 10, 15 years, I got off slight. So I walked in the courtroom, I'm shackled, my hands and my wrists shackled. They consider me dangerous. I don't know. I didn't think so. And what kind of changed in me, this kind of day kind of shifted my whole entire life. I walk out in the courtroom and I see my who. So my mother. So I see the tears running down my mother's eyes. And there was a tear that I seen time and time again with my father going in and out of jail. This just happened to be one of the longest stints that he was going to do. So, but at this point, I'm walking out there and all of the gangster and everything just fell out of me. Seeing that look and knowing that I was the cause of her hurt, I'm supposed to be a protector. My father's gone. I'm supposed to be the one that's there for her, the one that actually don't let her down. So in that moment, I pledged to myself mentally, like, if I get out of this one, I was brought up in church, so I still had the mindset to meditate on God. So I meditated, I said, God, if you get me out of this one, I will never be the cause of my mother's hurt again. So that's where the magic happened. So it's time for the police to actually testify now. So my fate is in his hands. So he comes out, he takes a stand, and the words that came out of his mouth totally changed my whole life. He told the judge, Your Honor, I used to watch Donnie play football in high school. He was a pretty good player, probably could have did something if he would have, had the right guys to apply himself. I think he needed another chance. So those words, my mother's tears, changed my life. So after that, I went back to, I finished up the few months they gave me. I went back to Maryland and, I thought to myself, like, I need to get away from this area. That's the only thing that's kind of going to. So I decided to go to the military. I said, I'm going to the military. So I went to the Air Force. I wanted to aim high, the easy route in my mind anyway. So I went to the Air Force and they rejected me. I had a charge because they have a really high standard on, getting in the Air Force. I said, well, I guess I'll just go to the Marines. The few, the proud. I went there. They said you can be gone in a year for boot camp. I'm thinking to myself, a year is a long time, when you're trying to, change yourself. So I went to the Navy and they say you can be gone in 6 months. So I went to the Navy. I did my 6 years in the Navy. One of the major was just once I started to just do right and lean on what I believe on, life just started falling in its own order. And it was just like things were happening that was just changing my mindset from where I grew up to where I'm at now, because I'm seeing things like, oh, I can do this. I mean, when I went to boot camp, I broke the record for the grade point average that was ever in the boot camp. So I automatically advanced like 3 grades when I went to my station. So now I'm getting more confident. People are speaking more life into me. So it's like, and just to go back to the officer, one special moment about that is it changed my mentality is because this is someone that I grew up, thinking that the system is against you. The system ain't against you. He was just doing his job. So for him to speak life into me when a time where he could ruin me, it kind of just gave me a whole different perspective. It just changed my whole view of the system. And it made me accept responsibility for what I did. So 3 of the lessons I did learn in that is in life, you have to be aware of what role you play with where you're at. Another thing was who you believe in or what you believe will either build you or break you. When I was growing up, I believed in I believed in my father and the lifestyle that he lived. So that's something that it built me and broke me at the same time. So, and the last thing is, if I wanted to be the person that I promised in that courtroom for my mother, I would have to rebuild myself and become the person that I know I'm born to be. So that's how I got to the transition in the military. So after my 6 years in the military, I went as a contractor for the government contractor. I stayed there for a while in 2006. The Office of the Director of National Intelligence stood up. So I was like one of the first group of people hired as government employees for the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Within 10 years, I had attained the GS-15 position, which is the highest on the GS scale, and I was serving as the Chief of Staff for the President's Daily Brief for the Office of Director of National Intelligence. So going through that trajectory, and you thinking that's a 15-year span, it just kind of changed your mindset. So now I'm passionate about, like one of my words is servant, I feel it's like my duty for that I know it's possible. Like it's not like I'm making this up or I had a fairy tale life. I know it's possible. So if something you know is possible and something you know can change somebody else, why wouldn't you tell somebody else? So I feel like I have no other duty. I have to go help other people who may be in this situation or my situation can help whatever situation they're in. And that's just a small part of my story, you know. So, you know, so I believe if somebody was to ask me what was my biggest lesson of all time, I would say love conquers all. I would say love conquers all because if it wasn't for the love of my mother, it would have been I wouldn't be where I am today. So my mother made me overlook all my past, all the stuff that I was born learning. It wasn't just something I woke up and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm tired of doing this. No, it was the love of my mother. So I tell a lot of people, like, when you can't find your why, because a why can change. You know, when I grew up, I didn't really want to do certain things. I didn't want to go to jail. But when I went to jail, you see it's really not, you're like, I could actually do this. And I mean, this is, everybody else do it. But once you do it, you're not scared of it, your why ain't gonna have to change. But your who likely won't change. It will get stronger over time. Because the more you mess up, the more stronger your who gets. So for me, it was like when I really wasn't doing nothing, of course I love my mother. But the more I saw the pain in her, the stronger my who got. So I tell people, if you can't find your why, well, you need to find your who.
Wow.
So there.
I'm going to interrupt you for a moment.
No, absolutely. I can go on and on. I'm sorry.
No, it was great. I mean, I got so pulled into your story. I mean, the thing that I really enjoy about you is the authenticity.
Yes, that was actually one of my words I was going to put.
You know, you got the grit, you got the acronym, you got the T-shirt. You know, it's possible. I think for me, the thing that stands out in your story is the love from the officer. Because he gave you unconditional love.
That's true. That's why love conquers all.
You know, the thing I was wondering is, at some moment in your life, are you going to go back and find him?
That would be a great idea, because it's not that I don't often think about him or often be, as you see, every chance I get, I give the officer credit, but I didn't know his name. You know, I was probably still half high when I was in the courtroom. So,
yeah.
But that would be especially now, because I do want to go back to where I was at, where I went to school there in Virginia, and actually speak to the students. So me coming back a whole different person and him actually seeing who I became would be a phenomenal.
Would be powerful.
It would. And I appreciate that.
That was such a positive reflection.
Advice I got all year. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, that's my job as the co-host. They've hired me to give the best advice.
That's right.
Yeah.
Really, I'm moved by you. I'm moved by your story. I'm moved by the passion you live with, and wow, incredible. So now I kind of want to hear more.
So now I have gotcha. So I was at the end of where I I was the chief staff for the president's daily brief. So eventually I moved out of the position. Now I have a wife, 5 kids, 2 grandchildren, live a pretty good life. Um, and I just, right now I'm at the point of service. I just want to serve people and help people and try to get people to the next level. So I feel like I call myself the A to B architect and a messenger of hope.
Oh, that's where that comes from.
Yeah. So that's
Wow.
kind of me. The architect is, the A to B architect. The A, where you start, to the B, to where you're destined and born to be. And then I give you the pillars. So the pillars of my so the 3 pillars were what really kind of I thought back. The 3 pillars are in line with what I used when I was growing up, but I just didn't know it. So the first one was awareness and alignment. So that's the pillar 1 of the A to B success framework. So pillar 1, the awareness part is, knowing where you're at, because if you don't know where you're at, you don't know where you're going. So, me growing up, I didn't know where I was at. I was just, I was all over the place. One minute I was here, I didn't have a vision. I didn't have a mission. I didn't have an end goal. It was, I wake up tomorrow and okay, what I'm doing today. It wasn't by the time I'm 30, I'll be X, Y, and Z. I'll be married with kids and this. It was like tomorrow, I'll just figure it out. So if you don't know where you're at, you don't know where you're going. And this is the part where you start assessing yourself, yourself, and am I the person that I need to be? What have I done in my life that put me in this situation? It's just being aware of yourself. So it's the time alone, being aware of yourself. So I do have a little workbook that has these principles in it and some exercises. But it's the part where you learn yourself. This is the getting to know yourself part where you just phase out and you do you, and then you align yourself with your purpose. And then the second pillar is the belief and breakthrough. So the belief and breakthrough is a critical part of the success, because like I was telling you about, one thing I realized was that what you believe in or who you believe, it will either make or break you. And a lot of people don't look at life like that, and they just think of what you believe in. It's not always what you believe in. It could be what you believe, who you believe in as well. A lot of relationships are torn because people believe in the other person and they wasn't who they said they was. So, for me, I believed in my father, thinking that was the right path. So if I would have just wholly believed in my mother, I never would have been through that. So you can believe in people too as well. It's not just believing.
So, I have a question. So as I'm listening, you're alluding to the idea that your father actually, the way that he was living, it fortified your ability to deliver a powerful message in the future.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so, yes, yeah, wonderful.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
you're able to perceive that the darkness that comes in also has the ability to lead you to more light.
Absolutely. That's a great one. I can't wait to get a copy of this one. Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
I like
Wow.
the way you phrased to lean on what you believe on or believe in. I was like, I never thought of it that way. And I like how it rhymes because then it makes it easy to remember. But then the lean on and the believe on just reminds us that human beings are also some of the things that we need to believe in or believe on. Where, just as you said, it's not necessarily always your why that is inspiring you. Sometimes it is a human being. So then how do we bridge the two? You've kind of shared a little bit, but I'd like a little more clarity in your life and your experience, how you've bridged your why with your who so that it creates an even better foundation.
Oh, yeah. So my why kind of disappeared. And so my who kind of encompasses everything. So my who is versatile, because my who could be my mother, it could be my wife, it could be it could vary, but the love that I have for them, the certain people, if one was to leave, I still have a who. if it took a long time for my who's to go away because I have kids. So if something was to happen to my mother, we just celebrated her 80-year-old birthday not too long ago. So yep, she's still driving and everything. She's when you've been a Christian all your life, never drank, smoke, you can do those things. So 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 if something happened to either of my parents, my father, we are actually really close. My father's like my best friend. I just want to put that disclaimer. He's always been my best friend. Now I'm like his role model. So, and he's spoken out recently of, I wish I was there for you and did a better job at X, Y, and Z. So he acknowledged it. And he was at my graduation at boot camp. That was when he was released. He actually was released right when I went to boot camp, and that was the last time I seen him and my mother actually together. But that kind of changed things too, because the pride in his face, kind of made me think, well, I was thinking one thing, that person I had to be, but I really didn't have to be that person. And as I become a parent, and if I put myself in that situation, his life was chosen before I was born. So his trajectory was already going in one direction. I'm thinking, because I think a lot. So, and I put myself in a situation. So I try to justify, behaviors. And I think, like, if I was him and I grew up in that situation, I'd probably be happy that my child didn't, because I've been to jail, I've been to this. I have so many regrets that if I have a child that actually didn't go through this, I would be happy, because all the rest of my brothers and sisters went to jail. Um, so for him, I know he feels the guilt as well as being that, that person that people wanted to be like. And, but so I kind of look at things both ways, just to try to give people grace. 'Cause I try to give everybody grace, because he didn't know. I mean, he wasn't equipped with the right information.
So
Wow.
Donnie, I want to get on the other side of things, where I want to know how you have decided to share your message. So obviously you're podcasting, you're on one right now. Do you speak? Do you write?
So I always say this. So that's my go-to. So so I write speeches. Right now I'm more so focused on trying to get into the schools. I do the social media posts, but I've been trying to pinpoint my target, so I'm not shotgunning. Because I've been blessed enough to have so many experiences that there's a lot of areas in which I could go. And I play sports. I can do the sports. I can do the schools. I can do the leadership. I can do the senior executives. I'm kind of really versatile. I can do the kids. So I think I want to focus on the middle school, the high school. The more I narrow down the story, the more I feel like that would be the most impactful, because that's kind of where my story started. So for the inner city kids who actually going through that at that moment, I know exactly what you're going through. Not saying I won't take other gigs, but I think the most impact that I feel I can probably stop a child and change their mindset and, hopefully save a life. That would probably be my go-to if I had to.
Did you always see yourself as a speaker, or did you have?
I never spoke. I never saw myself as a speaker. I brief, in the intelligence community, when you brief in senior executives and all that, it just comes natural, because, you do it every day. It becomes your job. But when you start getting in front of people you don't know, it could be a little bit much. And then I wasn't really, in my mind, I was already impactful, because I am the message. So I don't have to go anywhere. Anywhere I'm at, I'm the message. If you see me at McDonald's, you're gonna hear some type of message if you talk to me long enough. If you hear, that's just who I am. So for me to have to speak, I just naturally lean towards those type conversations. But I want to make it more impactful. People are like, oh man, you should do X, Y, and Z. I'm like, we can do one-on-one, and because I feel the impact. I can see the change, but to have a overall one would be great to actually. That's why I wanted to do it and have more impact, because I can go to a whole class of kids. So.
Wow. I mean, the
So.
thing that I get from you is that impact is one of your highest values, and that you've merged that with care and
Absolutely.
authenticity. And so if you can create an acronym out of that, I think that would speak to who it is you've become,
Hmm.
and let that move forward, because you really care. Like, this isn't like a thing for you. This isn't an image thing. It's you're taking everything from your life. You're not leaving anything behind, and you're bringing everything forward to every moment you go into. That's a powerful way to live.
Yeah. Thankfully, I've been blessed enough to where it's not about the money. So when a lot of people now that they see that I speak and I talk to people, and because a lot of people, first thing come to mind is the money. They're like, "Oh, you speaking? You must be getting some money." I'm like, and they be like, "I want to speak with you. So how you want this? How you think to look?" I don't know, man. What about the money? We can't speak together. If you can't do it for free, you can't speak for me, because I need to know that you doing it out of your heart, not just because with somebody the compensation. Once you speak out your heart, the impact is different.
Mm.
And that's where a lot of people, when they're doing the shoulds, you should be a speaker if you want to share your message and get it out there. But that's what I'm trying to highlight is, just because you should doesn't mean it feels right for you. And you were saying that you weren't always a speaker, but you did kind of have that experience to become more and more of a speaker. And that's the way that you like to have conversations with people now.
Mm-hmm.
So I like highlighting that piece. Yeah. So Donnie, do you do any writing?
I do write. So I've written my part in the collaboration book with bLU Talks. So I did complete that. Yes. Yes. Selfless plug.
I'm like, I have it next to me. Why not?
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. So right now I'm looking forward to that, and I'm continue writing my full book. Um, and I kind of like the fact that I'm having this opportunity to share stories, and because the book changes even sometimes, because while I'm writing, I want to get the full effect. That's why I haven't been rushing it. 'Cause especially now that I'm getting into the speaking more into it. I do speak next month for the National Association for Black Social Workers as a keynote. And of
Right.
course, I'm doing the bLU Talks in Oxford University in London in October.
Nice.
Absolutely. So I look forward to both of those. But yeah.
Okay, so did you always see yourself as a writer?
I did not. I didn't. I hate writing. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's just it's too much, especially talking about writing a book.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a lot of filler words.
So
Especially as a
then,
guy, we very abrupt. It'd be like a 3-page life story.
I mean, you can if you want, but then that's where the compilation books work better than a solo book.
Absolutely. No, I'm trying though. I'm getting more into it.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm getting more. It's
So
just
what got
finding
you over that
time.
hurdle of starting then?
So again, I have a family. My son plays AAU basketball. He played like 2 teams and he trains. So he might have a Tuesday, Thursday basketball training, Monday, Wednesday, Friday training for the team, Saturday, Sunday tournaments. So this kind of get through the childhood. My daughter's a gymnast and she dances. So we just really super busy. And then I also had a trucking company. I had got my brother was locked up in he was in a low facility and they offered trucking. So he got out, got a CDL. He has a house. He got married. He living a good life. So before he got out, I was like, this is a good way, again, me trying to help people to give back and give opportunities to people who don't otherwise wouldn't be able to have opportunity. And CDL is one of them. So I was like, oh, let me buy me some trucks. So I bought some trucks, trying to help people out, and I'm trying to get through that one because it's like so much on my plate. I'm like, maybe I have a driver that I think I've watched him grow, and I want to kind of like transition the business to him as a gift to him. He's been sticking with me for thick and thin.
So when do you sleep?
That's the thing. So like, yeah, it's a lot. Just like trying to do that, and do this speaking and have a nonprofit ex-offender program as well, where I used to go in with Catholic Charities and prison fellowship. Then COVID happened, so I'm trying to get back in. But I have a fatherhood program for incarcerated fathers. So once I can get back into jails, I'll be going into jails. But I'm about to also do a program in the DC area for dads. So I'm gonna be running my program for dads in DC. So I'm trying to, the older the more, at first I just wanted impact. So it didn't matter like what the topic was. I would just, I don't care if it's, people against bad feet. I don't care. If I can have a impact there, or I can try to help somebody, it's good. I'm cool. But the older I'm getting and the more I'm trying to tighten it up to where I can have the most impact. So, where I was all over the place, just move here and there. This way I can at least target, the incarcerated dads. People say, well, you were an incarcerated dad. No, but I was a child of one. So I know what your child need. I know what you should be providing your child, and I know how your child feeling right now. And again, that ties into your who. Most fathers in jail have a who. The best if they have a child, they best believe they have a who.
Yeah.
And a lot of acting out is probably because of that who. They're probably distant. Bridging that gap. Because one thing good about me and my father, we did communicate when he was in jail. He was actually a better father in jail than he was on the streets.
Nice. So I think your answer to Christopher's question is no, you don't sleep. But on that note, where do we find you and what is your favorite way to communicate?
Well, you can find me on DonnieLandon.com. On all the social media networks as well. So just Donnie Landon. I think I'm probably the only one in the world from my research. But yeah, Donnie Landon on all social media platforms or DonnieLandon.com. So you just remember Donnie Landon now because you'll be hearing about it in the future.
We have about a minute and a half left, and I like to hold space at the end of an interview just in case there's something on your mind or in your heart that you just need people to take away from this conversation. So what would you like to share?
I would like to let everyone know that I challenge you. Love conquers all. Love conquers all. I challenge you to show some love to someone today. Just show some love, no hate. Just show some love and just find out who are you not being present for. Because if you love someone enough and you're not being present, they know you're not present. So I just challenge you to, spread some love today.
Aw, sprinkle it everywhere.
Just sprinkle a little bit. That's all.
Awesome.
Well, I was in the military, Donnie.
Oh, nice.
I was in the Navy.
I was in the Navy too.
Yeah, I was at SEAL Team 5.
Oh,
and
nice.
Went that route. But I really resonate with your message. And, the thing that I really love about what you're doing and what I'm taking away as a strong reflection is that authenticity and becoming your message is something that's so important. And then when you become your message instead of being a messenger, you don't have to do anything. Just the presence that you have and wherever you go and whatever you're doing, you're touching people's lives every time you open your mouth, every time you take a heartfelt action. But you're an inspired young man, and you're living a very powerful life. And I know when you look in the mirror, you feel good about you, and that's incredibly awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm going to take this moment to call this the official close of the interview portion. I do invite you to stay, of course, for the next few minutes, and we'll just do a little roundtable of some of the insights or favorite moments of our conversation. So, Christopher, I'm actually going to start with you. What's something that stood out to you during our conversation today?
I mean, for me, I'm usually less about content, and I'm more about the person. The thing that I take away from you, for myself, actually, is the place that you're coming from, right? There's many ways to live your life, but it's difficult to come from a place of authenticity because everything around us is always showing us an image that can question our value, and you have broken through all of those false images to figure out how to share the maximal amount of love that you have in your heart every day in various ways. Like it's you're an incredible human.
Thank you.
That's what I'm taking away. You're a beautiful reflection of God's love, light, and presence. And please keep going. I will reach out to your website and find you. That's how impactful you are.
Thank you.
Soak it in, Donnie. Soak it in.
I know, right? No, I'm trying to avoid crying.
I know. It's like, just love
I know.
yourself, feel it.
Yeah. It's because it's like sometimes it's sometimes you need somebody that understands to speak life into you and confirm like the confirmation that I'm on the right path and don't give up, because it could be hard, so those are really, really meaningful because I think like that, I feel like that, but at the end of the day, I feel like you're just a dad, you're just a husband, you're just a, you're just a this, you're just a that, but to hear from the outside in, like speaking life into you and you kind of know when it's speaking life into you when you're just sitting there and your emotions are actually the words that spoke to your emotions, like your emotions and your soul. So when it starts speaking to your soul, then that's kind of like God's confirmation.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
have more.
I
Yeah,
have one
more.
question.
Oh.
What's the title of your book? What's it going to be?
So I've struggled with two. One of them was From the Streets to the White House. The other one was Raised by Faith, Forged in Fire.
Mm.
So I'm open to ideas, but I'm kind of jiggling on both because it depends on if you want to really get gritty and really like pour into it. I think Raised by Faith, Forged by, it depends on how you're trying to go. If you want to be really inspirational, then From the Streets to the White House. I mean, I guess you can do for both, but I'm just trying,
I just want to share this comment from David. He says, "Great show so far. Keep being yourself. You're right where you need to be, Donnie."
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
See, everybody's sending you love today, Donnie.
Oh, I appreciate
Donnie,
it.
what's something that stood out to you during our conversation then?
What something stood out to me is, again, the confirmation. Both of you all asked a lot of great questions because in my mind, I had something totally different planned. Like I was like, oh, boom, hit A, B, C, E, E, F, G. I'm on, I'm off my Sesame Street right now, So, what really stood out to me is I felt like I was in like a session, like a mentoring slash, it was just so much going on that enhanced my story. It's just having that one-on-one connection that kind of brought parts of my story out that I probably otherwise wouldn't have said. And then the pulling the questions out of me was like, oh wow. Like those times I had to pause myself in the story. And I usually can tell the story, like without even getting too emotional. But I found the more deeper I went, the more, which is good because I need to get that part out so I can be able to present it to others. Because you only perform really to like the level of comfort you have emotionally. So the more emotions I can get out in front of people, the more I can tell the story because it's that's like a fourth of the story.
Well, when you finish your book, I'd love to write your foreword for you.
No, I would appreciate that. Definitely will. You just motivated me to write the book.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna do it. I have like 2 or 3 chapters. It's just struggling on how many pages would be efficient because I don't want to do too many. I mean, 2 less pages, but I want to get the point across in a concise manner. I don't want to just rumble on and ramble on.
So I will remind you, right, that, okay.
Oh, yeah, I got that. Hey, I'm in there.
I know. But the size of the big books, they're not even big books. They're just your normal
regular book.
5
How many pages is that one?
And then the other one is so much smaller, right?
Oh, yeah.
But this is doable for what it wants. This is doable for what it wants. It's the same thing for you. You don't have to do a big, thick book, and you don't have to do a super thin book. If it ends up being 90 pages, it ends up being 90 pages.
Okay.
If it ends up being 390 pages, it ends up being 390 pages.
Your message is your message.
Yeah.
And you're an emotional being that's living an inspired life. So bring that love forward and bring fire to the pages. That's it.
Gotcha.
because
So just start writing.
you have the who. The who is every young black man, son, and every elder black father who has been through something difficult and needs to know that it's possible
Mm-hmm.
to get from the
Gotcha.
streets to the White House.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donnie, this has been beautiful. I want to ask you more questions and spend more time, but our time is up. So I just want to say thank you. And I'm so
Okay.
appreciative of you sharing your heart and not just your words with us. So
And
much.
take down my name, Donnie.
Okay, I'm taking it down now. Let me
Yeah.
write it down. Should I spell it right?
Awesome. So I'm gonna put you in the backstage. We'll bring up our next guest, and you can hang out in the backstage as long as you like.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you, Donnie.
You're awesome, Donnie. You're awesome
thank
too,
you.
Laura.
Oh,
Hey.
I'm still on live? I thought y'all cut me off of live.
No, I'm gonna cut you off now. Okay, bye.
Oh, no, I thought I was off at 40. That's why I took the phone down.
Okay. So our next guest is behind the scenes, just trying to keep us on point. Allison, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us.
Yeah.
Hi, Allison.
Hi. Oh, do I look dark?
Yeah, we can see you. We can hear you. It's all good. So I think you know my pattern. That's fine. It's still lovely, and it's been a while since we chatted, so I get to see this new elevated version of Allison. So Allison, here's my opening question. If you could have other people describe you in just 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be? As I ran out of space and have to flip my page.
Okay, good question. I would say brave.
Ooh. Mm-hmm.
Magnetic.
Uh-huh.
And like full of energy, energized.
Ooh, like the Energizer Bunny.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do these words brave, magnetic, and energized, how do they play a role in the key message that you have for people?
Yeah, I think one of my kind of key messages is that I'm trying to do through my kind of newer brand is to really challenge the status quo of both hustle culture and kind of the big pharma driven approach to mental health.
Mm-hmm.
So if I think of those words, I want to be able to, thought of as brave, someone who's willing to kind of call out what I don't believe in, or, call out things that, I've experienced that I don't necessarily agree with, and maybe inspire other people to, become accountable for their own health and kind of challenge the norm. And then I think from kind of, I'm working around burnout is kind of my underlying focus right now. And so if I think of energized or magnetic, it's what the women that I'm working with, what I want them to feel, what I want them to experience in their own lives. And so for me to kind of coach them and inspire them to make changes in their lives, that's how I need to kind of be existing in the world as well.
So what's the story behind this message? Why are you focusing on burnout and questioning the status quo?
It's my own kind of experience and through the whole mental health system. So I had 5 concussions when I was younger, was a very high achiever. So engineer, very traditional kind of path. Worked, a million hours, and I was navigating these concussions, and I was navigating a shoulder injury and a surgery, and kind of all of those things. And so at the time, I don't think burnout was even really a topic or something that was ever talked about, but I can look back now and say that was probably it. But in going through the mental health system, right, I dealt with anxiety, I dealt with I had some mania. So I was diagnosed like probably 7 different times with different mental health things, including a bipolar diagnosis. I was given like prescription after prescription after prescription, and most of them didn't work. A million side effects, and those things were just never really talked about. And I had a big crash, like a mental health crash at 30, and kind of went through actually went on medication, stabilized on, was on it for 8 years. And then kind of right back in the rat race. and working in management consulting, but very similar, 80 plus hour weeks. And all of a sudden I was getting migraines, being prescribed more meds for the headaches, like just this like continuous cycle of like more pills. And I kind of took it under my own, took it into my own hands and went down a path, like focused really on nutrition and nervous system regulation and time in nature and some of these more holistic things. I've tried every kind of biohacking thing as well. But I think I was able to go in doing all of these things. My medications were now over drugging me. So I was able to go fully off the medications and I've stayed off of them. And for me, some of those mental health things like anxiety and things are warning bells, are things that you want to listen to, not necessarily just mask, right? There's a time and place, I think, for medications where somebody needs help with symptoms during a crisis or during whatever, they deem necessary, or if it helps them. But I think they're handed out like candy, and the way that our work, like Western work culture, same thing. It's become the norm where you are expected to answer emails in the evenings and on the weekends and work, a million hours and take 2 weeks vacation. And so really it's kind of my experience through that and realizing, oh, wait, you can actually do it differently. You can be successful and make money and not live like that. And yeah, there's a million other tools. And I think people, my goal is to inspire people to kind of become accountable for their own health and their own kind of performance.
So, okay. Cause this is so similar to all the stuff that I went through. It's like, I took engineering, I went through burnout. I remember the 80-hour work week. I remember not the concussions, but definitely the mental health issues. But how do you go from that high performance in a very, I'm going to say think heavy lifestyle into the crash and the burn of burnout, of the overwhelm, of the mental health, where like it feels like you're just constantly tripping over yourself? How did that transition get handled so that we can kind of understand the other side too of why all of this nervous system regulation?
Yeah, I think like for me, what it felt like is like I, went from being like always on top of things and feeling so successful and performing well to not actually being able to do that at the end. The second time that I burnt out, where, I had like constant brain fog. I barely slept. I think at one point I even wore sleeping 4 hours a night, like as a badge of honor.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. And so you don't sleep like that over and over. You start just forgetting things. The actual clarity to try to like perform well at work. And, my thoughts were jumbled. I was literally living off of caffeine. And those types of things. And yeah, you just start, like I got to the point, and for me, I think probably as a result of the concussions, but the more research I do around burnout, I think it's actually a pretty common symptom is headaches.
Yeah.
And so my headaches got to the point where I couldn't even barely function. And so I took a 4-week health leave, and it took almost 3.5 weeks before I started feeling normal. Like that's how depleted I was. And it was very simple things like walking outside and just slowing down, having like getting rid of some of the mental clutter, like where you're being constantly on all the time. And when I went back to work, I was thrown right into the mix of several proposals and launching a couple projects. And within 4 days, headaches were back. And I think that, so that for me was the biggest, where I was like, I can't do this forever. Like, this is not the life that I want to live forever, and you're sacrificing, I think, when you're working that many hours, you're sacrificing everything, right? You're not only sacrificing your health, you're sacrificing relationships. Like I had to cancel on things all the time. You go on a vacation and you're working on the vacation.
Maybe.
Right? And it's like, those are the kinds of things where I was just like, this is not how I want to live. Right. And so for me, I actually did this very similar work for the next 4 years. I left corporate and I started my own company, and I ended up doing oil and gas consulting. So I did very similar, like the exact same work, but I was working 40-hour weeks, 35 to 40-hour weeks on my own terms, making over double what I had been making, the ability and freedom to kind of book weeks off if I wanted. So when I went on a vacation, it was a vacation. So
I have a question, Allison.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. My question for you, and the thing that I'm hearing is performance was sort of your gift. And I think, were you getting acknowledged a lot for that gift? And did that inspire you to perform more? And then at what point did you realize that performance in some way was also a curse?
Yeah, loaded question. Yeah, that's a really good one. I think I was definitely addicted to it, right? There's like the achievement of becoming an engineer. I was in a very male-dominated field. Like with each promotion, there is something where you become a bit addicted to that almost status, right? Like of okay, what's next? Am I gonna go for director? Am I going for partner? Am I right? You start to like in my head without even really thinking about those things as something I wanted. I maybe a bit addicted to that achieving, right? Because that's something you're right. I always got kudos for. I always did well in school. I got awards. I got scholarships. I got, there's like that reinforcement for that kind of behavior over and over. And it was funny because when I was deciding to leave or not, I actually had a partner at the firm do a values exercise with me. So very
Mm.
simple, kind of go through your top five values. And for me, it was like, time with family, giving back, physical health, mental health. And when I went through this like list of things, I was not achieving a single one of my values at work or in my home life as a result of the job that I was doing and the way that I was kind of living. And that was a big eye opener where I was like,
Mm.
oh, okay, why am I doing this status? I don't want to be partner in this type of work. I'm not, living a healthy lifestyle. I'm not spending time with family and friends. And so I think I had to do a really like hard look at, okay, what does achievement mean? And what's the value in that?
Okay, so you're saying you redefined what your image was going to be and you aligned your life to your core values. And in doing so, you were being paid twice as much for half the time.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it?
Wow.
Like, and you're just the energetics, right? Like when I go back to that word of wanting to think of being magnetic or energized or all of a sudden I was like, you think of the burnt out version of you, which is exhausted and snappy and irritable and, you know, not your best self versus even though I was still not giving back at that time in terms of the work, like I'm now transitioning to I have transitioned kind of away from oil and gas consulting, but just the ability to deliver work in a way where I was healthy and like my energy in delivering the work was completely different too.
Wow. I mean, it's a very profound sort of like the heroine's journey. So, are you now inspired to guide other women who are in corporate structures and suffering from the same thing?
That's exactly like the type of people that I'm kind of working with and wanting to work with. And it's not for not everybody wants to become an entrepreneur. My dad is an entrepreneur. I've kind of always had that in me to want to create something of my own. But it's not without its own challenges. Like it takes a certain type it brings up every uncomfortable thing you go through. So I don't think everybody needs to leave corporate. Like some people love their jobs but I think there's a way that people can, if the value is to stay in those corporate roles, but they're burnt out and exhausted and not living their best life. I think there's ways to have better boundaries, to set up the environment or have like different conversations about work structure, align kind of the tasks and some of the busy work that you do with your energy, like getting rid of some of the non-essential tasks. And so I think there's a way to work kind of smarter within still those corporate roles that create the same maybe freedom and right if entrepreneurship, or for people that want to be in the entrepreneur, like I'm now on my second company, and so also be able to guide people through that journey. Like there's a lot of things I've learned that I would do differently if I were to start a company again, right, to streamline it. And so yeah, those are the kind of things that I would love to be able to help especially other women do.
Wow, that's profound. Now, are you open to writing a book? Or other ways in which are you, what other ways are you creating opportunities for people to get a hold of you and to learn the life lessons that were painful for you? to maybe able to give them a little bit of a shortcut and the insight to understanding that the image of what it is you're trying to align to will take you away from your core values and who it is you really are.
Yeah, I'm definitely open to writing a book. I am planning to do that at some point. I have put 2 chapters in 2 of the bLU Talk books. So I've written,
Wow.
yeah, and I've started public speaking about it. So
Bravo.
I in volumes, I think 11 and 14. The first volume, I talk about my mental health crash at 30 and I went to Uganda after as a way to kind of heal. And so I talk about that in just the chapter. And then the second chapter in volume 14 of bLU Talks was was about my burnout journey. So I've started kind of talking about those and started public speaking about it a bit. I've been on a few yeah, those ones.
Yeah. I don't have those particular ones, but these are the ones I do have.
Yeah. Same idea. I think the other one, the 14 is just coming out right now. So it's just in pre-sale right now. So I've been on a few podcasts. So I've started public speaking a little bit about it. I've started putting out more and more content. So that's something I'm going to be putting out a lot of. And I'm finally launching my website next week. So,
wow.
So, and programs and so I've been building a lot behind the scenes for about the last 6 months, and I'm ready to kind of put more of this out in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, I'm just thinking about all the people like you in the last, I'm going to say even just 2 years that have been rebranding, clarifying, I guess, what it is that they actually do, who it is that they actually serve, so that it's so much more streamlined and it feels like them, because they're sick of that hamster wheel or the hustle culture. They're like, why am I on 17 different social media platforms posting 5 times a day? And it's like, I have no energy to do anything else. Because they should.
Well, and that's part of the trap, I think, of entrepreneurship. Like, I have definitely gone down that path a little bit, and I'm like, okay, that's not like, it's like you get right back into that ingrained to burnout kind of, path. And recently I've kind of gotten back to like, nope, like I've taken a step back and doing a bit more strategy work behind. So it's like, okay, if I'm going to post every day on social media to get the algorithms going and get the content across and how do I do this in a streamlined fashion? So I've been doing a lot of work with like looking into different AI platforms and how to automate some of that work. And so that's a big component. Like when I had started developing my business and started public speaking, I was really focused on doing trauma work.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and in the last few years, I've lost a friend to cancer. Both of my parents have been sick. I had a former partner, struggle with kind of addictions, and he was very unhealthy. So I've had all of this actual kind of trauma and loss in my life. And so when I was building that, and business has been my background, so systems and structure, and so that's part of my rebranding in the last 6 months is I'm like, how do I integrate my business experience, those problem solving, technical kind of skills, the engineering brain, with some of this wellness, trauma aligned work, so mental health aligned work, but not taking on just fully trauma things. Because I feel like at this age, like everybody goes through something, right? There's so many people these days with cancer. There's so many, like we all kind of go, that's part of the human experience, right? So instead of focusing just on trauma, I've kind of rebranded to be like, how do I help women in their actual life? So whether they're going through something or they just need better systems within their like workplace or how they work, or foundational health. Like that's a big part of my platform. So functional nutrition, integrated health. That's starting with a foundation of actual health to drive performance.
Oh yeah,
so I've been learning it as I go through, like it's funny. I've been doing it on myself as I've been building this second company.
Okay, so hearing all that you're sharing, how would you prioritize if you were coaching someone and guiding them? How would you teach them to prioritize their life based on your experiences? Like what I'm hearing from you is that health should be somewhere near the top of priorities. or at least the foundation of what they're doing, and then bridge up. What's your advice based on your
Yeah,
own
I think health,
experience?
like, I think we can all have a million problems until you're unhealthy. And then when you're unhealthy, that is your that is your only problem, right? For people who are really sick. And so I've seen too many times, like the decisions you make now affect you 10 years later and 20 years later. And so I think the kind of big ones like sleep, figuring out actual sleep quantity and quality, like that was something that I never prioritized. Like I slept 4 or 5 hours a night. So now that's been a huge change for me, like getting that 7 or 8 hours, like tracking the quality, different bedtime routine, off the screens, those kinds of things. Because I think sleep is a big one for a big gap when people are constantly on and stressed and living in that like stress mode. And then like nutrition, like basic nutrition, right? There's so much crap in all of our food. Like there's so much processed food and so much crap in our food. And it affects everything. It affects our hormones. It affects like sleep. It affects your energy. It affects how your brain operates. So that's like a really simple one for, helping people with like small tweaks, like an actual like nutritionist or like a nutritious breakfast, right? That's made up of like a protein and a fat and like some veggies and like some fiber, like something like starting like the day like that can make such a big difference in how much coffee you need, which then spikes your cortisol, which then puts you more in stress mode. So a lot of the things are not like, for people who want it, like me, who loves health and wellness and wants to go to that biohacking level of tracking everything. And like, that's kind of the next level. But there's a lot of like foundational principles, like sunlight in your eyes in the morning, time in nature, like even small little breaks, like if for people that are like always on at work, scheduling a 5-minute break, like 3 times a day, put it in your calendar if you have to, right? To just go walk for 5 minutes. Like, it's some of those simple things, right, that can just reset the nervous system, and we just get too busy and you get in the hustle mode and we don't do some of those things, right?
Okay, so I'm hearing sleep, prioritize pattern interrupts, and getting into nature and tuning in with the sun.
Yeah, and I would maybe add one more, like stress management. So figuring out ways to live, like we were not meant to live in this kind of fight or flight state all the time. And the way we're bombarded now with news and digital and phone, and like our brains are constantly on, right? And then you add in real stressors of work, and people have families, kids, relationships. If you have aging parents, like someone sick in your like, we're just bombarded, right? And we're not meant to live in this like constant stress state. So I think that's the other one that I work a lot with, is helping people to introduce just small principles to regulate your nervous system, to get us out of that constant stress state.
Now, there's a lot of people, when you say the word regulate your nervous system, they don't actually know what that means. So in your experience, what does regulating your nervous system actually mean?
It would mean like basically coming out of the stress cycle. So there's a level of stress like that is good for us. You think of like an athlete, or you think of, right, that performance, like a little bit of stress, a little bit of can drive performance, right? So it's not always a bad thing to have our nervous systems work for us like that, but we're not meant to stay in that state, right? So if you're starting the day with coffee before food, and then you're already spiking your cortisol to start the day, right? And then you get on your phone the minute you start the day, like you're already getting those like dopamine hits off your phones. Your brain is already like going. Probably haven't had a glass of water before that coffee to like hydrate out of sleep. And then we're racing to whatever, if you're dropping off the kids and you're going to work, and you're like, your entire day is in this like stress mode. And the problem with that like elevated level of like stress and cortisol is it causes like chronic inflammation. It does like wreaks havoc on the body. Our bodies were not meant to stay in that state. So it's just completing the cycle. It's having, if you are stressed and you have a deadline and you're like, it's like, how do we come out of that? What are the small things? And whether it's, if people are into meditation, like a 10-minute meditation, but it can be as simple as taking 1 minute to just breathe, like a box breathing kind of thing, right? Where it's like, inhale 4, hold for 4, exhale 4. Like simple things like that. But if you can introduce them regularly and make them kind of part of your, and then this is where adding in nature, adding in like actual things that bring joy, right? The things that like, and what that does is it takes your body, it completes that stress cycle, right? It doesn't keep you in that chronic elevated where our hormones are like wreaked havoc, our brain, you know, are constantly on. Like it allows the body to actually do the other functions. So one of the things is when you're in that high stress mode, other systems don't work. So like digestion, as an example, right? They call it like our sympathetic nervous system, fight or flight, and our parasympathetic would be like rest and digest, they call it. So things like digestion don't work properly in a constant elevated. So people that have gut issues and all these autoimmune issues, like often comes from this chronic elevated, like constant level of stress.
Yes. I was like, that's describing like the last decade and a half of my life.
Yeah.
So you're saying that people who are, once you have the realization that you're in a high stress environment that requires more than you have to give, it's a good idea to find somebody who will help you manage the stress that you're under so that you can dysregulate, or let's say downregulate out of that stress state and get back into a state of peace and calm.
Yeah. Like I think people that are in the burnout state think of like adding something like coaching or something as like, oh my God, I can't take on one more thing, or I can't like. And my goal when I work with people is not to add on a whole bunch, like to a burned out person. It's not to add on, 100 modules and go do this and do it. Like it's one of those simple little tweaks in your regular life that can make your regular, like that can give you back actual time. Because if your brain's functioning, but like if you're not at that elevated level of stress, your brain actually functions better. So you can actually perform better than you can working 15-hour days. Like that, I think that's one of the backwards things in hustle culture. It's like more doesn't equal more in terms of, hours does not equal more performance, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I think, and then sometimes it's those little tweaks that when you're in it, when you're in that burnout state, you don't almost see yourself. Like you're like, oh, I shouldn't drink the coffee, I shouldn't like, but it's like, it almost sometimes takes somebody like giving you just a few tweaks and tools to kind of, that you can slowly implement and trying them for a couple of weeks or 3 days. And then when you start to feel better, it's like, oh, okay, like maybe I can add something else on, like, and that's part of the other thing too, is I do a lot like around like habit stacking. So, if somebody's too busy to fit in a 10-minute meditation, it's like, okay, well, can you do a small box breathing, like every time you brush your teeth? Or, right. So it's like something that your brain is already doing kind of on autopilot. How do we then add something small? And then if you do that enough times, not only like through neuroplasticity, your brain actually, like it becomes part of your subconscious, the same way like brushing your teeth you do without thinking, right? So it's like not adding a million things. It's just those small little things that you can fit within your day to start training you're training your brain or making it part of your habits and your subconscious. And then once those things are part of your subconscious, they become, you just kind of do them, right? Like you don't have to think so much.
When you were in your struggle phase, did you have anyone step in, like a family member or a friend that said, hey, like you're going too hard too fast?
I have, yeah. And for me, like I think being potentially on a bipolar spectrum, I'm not sure, but I do present probably slightly manic or slightly, right? Or prone to depression. So excitable, yes.
Excitable.
So there's probably visible things, right? When I'm performing at my best versus when I'm, versus when I'm kind of on the verge of that crash. So I was very fortunate, to have like really close friends and family that I've been able to kind of share openly about it since I was younger. So I think going through that crash at 30 was helpful in that sense, where it allowed me to like talk about it a lot more. I think there was more of a stigma, right, in our parents' generation than there is now.
Oh, yes. And I know that the conversation around mental health is generally more toward the veterans and service providers. And I don't want to take away from that at all, because it is very prevalent, much more than the general population. But I also want to highlight that as entrepreneurs, there was a study done in 2019. I cannot remember by exactly who. I think it was an Entrepreneur Bank and maybe Futurepreneur combined. I will have to double check the reference on it. But at that point, this is pre-COVID, the general population was about 1 in 5. Service providers and veterans were 1 in 3, right? Almost double. Entrepreneurs were 1 in 2. And it's something we don't talk about, because most of the time we get into entrepreneurship because we're either pushed out of a typical 9 to 5, or we just don't fit right, or we just don't think the same. And so many of us start that way, not even to mention that there are the stresses of working the 80, 100-hour morning to night, every time you go to bed kind of stressors on top of that. And over long periods of time, it becomes chronic. But then since COVID, the general population has become 1 in 3. I can't imagine where veterans are. I can't imagine where entrepreneurs are. Just mind blowing. So this is so needed, so very much needed.
Yeah. And I think I think one of the big ones around that, and probably it aligns with what you're saying about entrepreneurs too, and also since COVID, is kind of lack of real connection. So one of the things that I've had to, when I kind of first started the entrepreneurial journey, like I was working almost full time in a client office until COVID. And then all of a sudden you're working from home by yourself all day. Right. And so and then new business as I'm building and launching behind the scenes, you're not like, I wasn't working with clients at the start. Right. So there's a lot of isolation. And so one of the things that I've had to do is like become part of like some network groups and, almost force a coffee meeting, not force, that's the wrong word, like schedule coffee meetings with people, like to get me out of the house to go. So I think that's a big one. Like, and I think that in the general population too, we feel like we're more connected because everybody's on every platform and you see them and you kind of feel like somebody's real life but those are like curated versions of somebody's life, not the real thing. It's not real connection. Like, so it's not replaced, right? It's like it almost replaces real connection. Like it used to be where you sit around in person and like actually, have, so I think that's a big part of it. And then I think COVID also brought up, like during that time, since it brought up a lot of stuff that was probably just shoved under the surface.
Very much.
And all of a sudden it made it, right? So some broken healthcare stuff, some broken how like workplaces work, like some of those things. And it's like, once some of that stuff comes up, it's like, you can't shove it back down. Like people are a little bit more aware of like, maybe they weren't as happy. Maybe they really enjoyed being able to work from home a couple of days a week and have that flexibility. Like some of those things, I think it really had kind of stirred the pot, right?
And just as you mentioned earlier about your workplace doing that values questionnaire with you, that's exactly what happened unknowingly at home when we were all stuck. Like you're forced to figure out what you actually value.
Yeah.
Maybe not every value that you have, but at least the ones that are prevalent in that particular case. Totally. And you're like, wait, am I doing what makes me happy, or am I making it so that I'm slowly burning myself out?
Yeah.
And then
everyone was forced to slow down, right? Like everyone, all the activities were canceled, all the things, like, so you were kind of forced to slow down a little bit.
There's so many more questions I want to ask, but I also want to make sure that we know where to find you and, of course, your favorite way to communicate.
Yeah. So my two kind of main platforms that I'm going to focus on are LinkedIn, which is just under Alice Simone's, under my personal name, and then under Instagram, which is Evolved Equilibrium is my new company name. So it's evolved_equilibrium. And then my new website will be launching next week, and it's just going to be evolvedequilibrium.com. So, and then I'll be sharing lots on those platforms and hoping to do more interviews like this, and because I love connecting like this, and
Definitely. I also like to hold space at the end of an interview, just in case there's something on your mind or in your heart that you just need people to take away from this conversation. So what would you like to leave people with?
I would say like life is short, and it's too short to work a bazillion hours and take 2 weeks of holidays if that is not the life that you're like, if you're not living your dream life. So if you can like sit down and you're not living the values that you want to live, and you're not like, it is possible to change. So I think that's like, we all have that ability, and it kind of seems scary, change. Our brains don't like that sometimes. But it also, I think if you can take those possibilities and really listen to your inner self of like, am I living the life that I want to? And if not, like, we all do have that capacity to change and do something that energizes us more.
So we have a little bit of time left. So I'm going to ask like this very conceptual question. If you could snap your fingers, flick on and off a light switch, or like, rub a genie lamp kind of idea here. We're not thinking logical. We're thinking very creative. If you could have your business and have those conversations go the way that you want them to go, what would you love to have happen in your business? Like, let's say in the next 12 months. Remember.
Yeah. My biggest dream is to, while I want like a fully online business, is to create spaces to also connect in person. So I would love to be able to start doing some retreats, right? So those like more intimate settings where you're connecting like in person, like really good food, some maybe guided meditations, like fitness aspect to it, but then also maybe a little bit of adventure. So I've traveled a lot in my life, and so being able to kind of share, maybe bring people a little bit out of their comfort zone in terms of doing more adventurous things on those types of trips. So I think that's my goal. I'm going to try to host my first retreat hopefully at the end of this year. So that's where I can kind of see. I'm leaning towards, like, definitely will be somewhere warm, but I'm leaning towards either Costa Rica, or maybe Bali, but Bali I might not do the first one because it's just a little bit further, and logistic wise I might try somewhere that's a little bit closer. But Costa Rica comes to mind because it's one of those places that has all the like beautiful nature, but it's also, has like beach, and it's warm, and the food's good, like good food, and it would be easy to fit in all those kinds of things. There's certain places in Mexico I think would also be quite nice. I have seen a few retreats like done in Tulum, or those types of like, basically somewhere warm near an ocean.
Warm,
everywhere
quiet,
we're all
peaceful.
burned.
Yeah, warm, quiet, peaceful, and
warm, quiet,
like
peaceful.
Surrounded by nature. It has to be somewhere, because I would love to do things in nature, whether that be hikes or beach yoga, or I want some of those things that are actually like immersed outside, especially coming from Canada, where we are trapped inside so much of the winter.
Yes,
a lot of people are anyways,
Jamaica.
And for me, a question I have for you is, what's going to be the name of your book?
Ooh, that's I don't know yet, but I've kind of been, because I've been thinking about going for a TEDx too. So I've been thinking about weaving in like about how a bipolar diagnosis became my superpower, or like something to that, where it's a bit provocative about the mental health and kind of speaks to people that are really struggling with it, but putting a positive frame on it, right? Where it actually became my way of like listening to my body, like knowing when something's off, knowing, and I think when people get mental health diagnosis, it's often like, that's the end, you're diagnosed, you're on meds forever, whereas like, I think it can often just be an alarm bell, right? Anxiety can be from burnout. It can be from a lot of things, right? Or not eating properly, or not. So trying to put a positive spin back on kind of receiving those diagnoses.
Nice.
Okay, so using the diagnosis to...
We are going to run out of time, Christopher. So,
okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I just want to take this time to say thank you so much, Allison. We will consider this the official close of your interview. I do invite you to stay for the next few minutes, which of course Christopher can ask his question, we'll do a little bit of round table of what we took from the conversation for about the next 5 minutes or so. So go ahead, Christopher. You can use this time to ask your question.
Now I lost my question.
I'm sorry. I just
Okay.
wanted like her TV section to be fine. So
Yeah, I think the thing for me that I take away from you and everything that you're doing is that a diagnosis can be a gift if it causes you to go into a state of self-introspection and begin questioning how you got where you are. And it sounds like you have thoroughly done that in a very successful way. And I love that you're just living your life wanting to share and give back from the position that you're in.
Thank you. Yeah, that's my favorite part of the work that I'm starting to do is being able to give back and being able to help. When I had gone to Africa after I had this big mental health crash when I was young, and I was doing an outreach in the slum and I was volunteering there, and it was like I had actually lost my meds that I had just stabilized on the way over. They fell out of my bag on the flight, so I took 13 days to get them. So I went through withdrawals and all these things, but there was like such a looking around me at what people were struggling with there. Like there was this like voice in the back of my head of like, okay, you live a very privileged life. If you can't figure this out, like, how are you going to help? Because I was doing working for a women's organization or a girls organization. And I'm like, how are they going to? So you got to figure this out so that you can help other, people, like use your education, use what you've been given and learn to be able to help other people not struggle so much.
Yeah. So then, Allison, I'm going to ask you, what is something that stood out to you during our conversation today?
I love having these conversations and having things reflected back to you, right? So you can be really in your head as an engineer, as you're building, right? And be like, okay, is this going to be meaningful? Is this going to help people? Or so being able to have a conversation and have both of you reflect back kind of what I'm trying to achieve, like that feels great. Because it's like, okay, that's what I'm speaking on. It's what I am getting the message across, right? So I think that's really like powerful.
Nice. I think my biggest takeaway was that you did put words to much of what I've been feeling for the last, since 2014. So the last decade or so. I was very much a hyper achiever too. I did take the engineering, like all the stuff and things. We have so many connections I didn't even realize. But then I liked that you highlighted how sometimes there's just these little tweaks that are happening and you're not noticing that they're happening, but you're slowly burning out until your body's just like, we can't do this anymore. Yeah. You're not listening to all the symptoms we're giving you. And it's a very personal thing, just as you mentioned, like, what are your individual symptoms? Because your body is telling you, you're just not listening. How long are you going to wait?
And I think so many of us like shove them down, right? It's like ignore until your body often just like hits you with, okay, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to really give you something, right? Is often what happens to people, right? You ignore and you can kind of look back and be like, oh, right, I ignored that and that and that.
Yeah. This time last year, I couldn't walk for a month and I was like, okay, body, I think I get it.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm listening now.
Yeah, everything's much better now. But last year, I did not listen.
Yeah.
No, I thought I was listening. And in certain areas I was. But just as you said, you need the multi areas. And so in this way, everything looked fine. And then my body was trying to compensate.
Yeah. And that's the thing with stress. Like our body does store it. Oh, right. And so you live in that constant stress mode for that long and you start getting physical ailments, right? They start to creep up, right?
I want to say thank you so much for spending this time with us. Always a pleasure. We should reconnect in behind the scenes.
Yes.
So thank you, Allison.
Yeah. Thanks so much to both of you. That was really fun.
Thank you, Allison.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
We have our next guest behind the scenes. Kristina, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. I got 2 thumbs up. Even better. Okay, so hi, Kristina, as told
Hi.
by Canadian immigrants. I'm
Hello.
going to assume that you are a Canadian immigrant.
I am.
Yeah, you're Canadian.
You got it right. What gave it away?
No, I like that you put that in your title because it tells us a bit about you.
Yes.
But before we get too much into it, because I want to ask you about the cool books that are behind you. But I'm going to start with the question I usually start with so that we can learn about you before you tell us about you.
Okay.
So here's my question.
Okay.
If you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
I am 3 words other people describe. Helpful?
That you would love other people to describe you, whether it's true or not, doesn't matter.
Well, I would like them to say
Yes.
I'm helpful.
Okay.
I am kind. And I'm very inspirational.
Ooh, helpful, kind, and inspirational. So then how do those 3 words, helpful, kind, and inspirational, how do they play a role in the key message that you have for people?
So, well, I have my platform, As Told by Canadian Immigrants. The main stage is on YouTube, but there's also podcasts, and it is an online community. And what I do is I am the me that I wish I had when before and during and after my Canadian immigration journey. So I help them with emotional preparation, emotional sustenance while they're on the journey, some financial accountability, practical tips and tools to help them on their immigration journey. And then, of course, also helping them to move from surviving to thriving in Canada. So I think that the helpful is that's how I try to be helpful. Kind is I give a lot of my time to helping people to survive and thrive in Canada. And inspirational, I think I try to inspire people. I take my mess and made it my message and try to inspire people that way.
2 big questions there. I want to know about why you got into that work. But before that, I want to know why you decided to immigrate to Canada.
Okay. So in your last talk, when she's like, she wants to go somewhere warm and nice and tropical, I'm like, Jamaica. You didn't say Jamaica.
Yeah. Is that where you came from?
Yes. So I'm from Jamaica, and I grew up there, spent most of my life there all the way up until university. And coming out of university, it's now going into adulting, the work world. I studied architecture, which is nice and very different, very different from what I do now. I studied architecture. I finished school. I was always drawn to North America. I visited for the first time when I was 10. Before that, I couldn't because they wouldn't give us a visa. So when I finally went, I loved it. You only see it on TV, right? But the streets were golden, and I went to like a suburb area in North Carolina, so it was very, very polished. And I liked that. I'm a built environment kind of person. And so I loved North America. So my goal was North America. I think that's the dream of a lot of people in Jamaica, honestly. So finished university, and the conversation started like, okay, what's next? And a friend of mine mentioned Canada, and I'm like, oh, it's going to be too expensive. But it turns out it wasn't. It was quite achievable. It was expensive, but I was able to get through, and I came here as an international student to then further my education a little bit. But also, I thought that here I would have greater financial mobility, provided I stayed in architecture or wherever I decided to work in. Yeah. So I chose Canada, and Canada chose me back. Thank you, Canada.
What part of Canada are you in?
So I'm in the GTA. I'm a little bit east of Toronto in the Durham region.
Okay. I was like, what's GTN? I'm going to guess.
GTA, Greater Toronto Area. Sorry, because there's Toronto, the city, but then the Greater Toronto area are like all of the municipalities that surround Toronto. Yeah. So it's really the GTA.
To us, everywhere else, it's just Toronto.
Yeah, exactly. Because I was going to just say Toronto. So my bad. Your second question, you said.
Why? Oh, yeah, there's the 2 questions. I wanted to know why you came to Canada, but then, of course, why you decided to do this work. And part of it's obvious because you said you immigrated. But I want to know why this? Because anybody could do this, but why you? Why did you decide to do it?
So when I came, of course, as a trained architect to some extent, and I studied project management when I came here to further my postgraduate studies. Mm-hmm. And while doing that, I'm now an international student trying to figure out how to make Canada my home. And whoever signed me up for this, because I mean, I got advice and assistance to come here. They didn't tell me the whole story. So I got here, and it was jumping through. Even just my first visa was rejected to come to Canada as a student. And when I did apply, I only had just enough time to get to school before having to defer. And on faith, I did all kind of crazy things. I booked my plane ticket without having a visa approval or my passport. And I got my visa, my passport, boarded a plane, and attended school all within the same 24 hours.
Wow.
So coming here now, I've jumped through that hurdle thinking that, okay, you know, that bridge has been crossed. It should be okay from here. And it wasn't, you know, it was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of emotional stress, a lot of anxiety, and a lot of question marks in terms of, will I be able to even stay here? And having gone through that, several rejections even after that, I realized that there is so much gray between the black and white of immigration. It's more than just paperwork, you know. There's the emotional toll, and then there's the experience-based advice that you're not going to get from reading it on the immigration website. And so going through that as an international student, I became a little bit obsessed with immigration and the immigration policies. So I did a lot of research and studying, and I found my way through the permanent residency, then citizenship. And I started to tell my story because I realized people would ask me questions like, oh, how did you get this? And they would have like the wildest ideas about what's possible. And I was like, all right, I'm going to start a YouTube channel and share my story. So it started as a hobby while I worked in construction, because I did maintain my profession in construction and project management for 8 years. And I started the YouTube channel as a hobby, tiny obsession and passion for helping people. And now I've left the construction world. And now I'm full-time over on this side of the world, more social services than the technical services. And it's just very rewarding. Like I said, I'm trying to be the me I wish I had when I was going through the journey. And I find that it's such a life-changing experience for so many people that I have so much joy sharing people's stories, hearing people's stories, sharing my story. And I'm a tiny bit obsessed.
So on the architecture side, one of the places that I've always wanted to visit, because I took architecture too. Oh. I started in engineering and then I went into architecture.
Oh, fun.
I've always admired like New York because of their, I guess I'm going to say integration with nature. Like it's separate, but yet it's integrated, and it just the flow and the people centered versus the car centric and all the stuff and things. So like I get your desire to see other cultures and how they're doing it differently based on the value systems that you have.
Yes.
That's really cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
My question is, what was the feeling when you finally got your citizenship?
So this red thing back here is a graduation. It's a graduation cap.
Bring it up so we can see it.
This is a graduation cap.
Go put it on.
It's like a graduation cap, right? Okay. I bought this for my citizenship swearing-in ceremony. Wow. And I went to my citizenship swearing-in ceremony in a red dress, a white coat, my graduation hat, because it felt like I was graduating from Canadian immigration school. That's for sure. Yeah. All of the paperwork. But it was I even have a video. It's on my YouTube channel. It was exhilarating. I was excited. I was happy to be done with the paperwork. I was excited to reach my goal and just, on to the next thing. I don't have to think about this ever again. I never have to apply for another visa. If there's a country that I need a visa for, I'm probably not going to go. Wow. So it was just so accomplishing and exciting and exhilarating. And like I said, in their courtroom, I wore my graduation hat.
Wow. So I think for the listeners to really understand how difficult it is and how difficult it was, it felt like enormous trial and tribulation, kind of the level of stress that you go under when you're trying to complete a graduate school degree.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. With
I would have
far more
never
uncertainty.
known that.
Yeah. And it's with far more uncertainty, because in school, you know, you go to one level to the next. Once you pass your exams, that's the only like little, like, if I don't pass, I probably won't go to the next school, but they're not going to kick you out of school, right? You're not going to have to pack your bags and get on a plane and leave in case this application gets rejected. So, but definitely similar to that exams, paperwork, school, graduation thing, definitely.
Well, I would have never known that, because I know I've considered many times, like, man, I'd like maybe to move to Portugal or to Poland or to Hungary, just another place to live in the world. But after hearing what you're sharing, I'm like, maybe I'll stay parked here. What did you learn in the process about yourself?
Oh, so much. I think that North America, coming from a developing country, North America, even Europe, is sold as greener grass. And I think coming here, I realized that wherever you go, there you are, regardless of the color of the grass. And when I was leaving Jamaica, I was so determined to leave because I was determined to hit my goals and all that stuff. But I was ready to start over, even though I was young. I was very young. I was 21, right? I wanted to start over. That if you have things going on in your life, I had things going on in my life, you can't run away from them. You know, they will follow you in one way, shape, or form. So I learned that I have to, wherever I am, I have to focus on me and build me and develop me and take care of myself so that I can thrive in any environment. And Canada, North America, no place is going to solve my problem. But I'm the driving force behind that, and God, amongst other things, is what I learned.
So this is sort of like a cheeky question. How much do you miss the sun of Jamaica?
It is. I miss it. Especially like today, right now, it's pretty gray and it's still like spring hasn't figured it out yet. So there's no leaves on the trees. So I find that this is one thing that I tried to inform people about. Nobody really thinks about that when we're moving. We know that there's snow. We don't know how the weather is going to affect us and our mood. Daylight savings is the biggest thing, where tomorrow it's like 4:00, it's dark. And that's very different than what we're accustomed to, because we don't play around with the time, right? So I definitely miss the sun and the beach. But when I was in Jamaica, and when I do visit, I don't go to the beach nearly as often as I should. So it's almost like I try to just enjoy where I am. But I definitely miss the warmth and the beach and being able to just go outside without having to dress up in a bunch of clothes. I definitely miss that. I visit very often, though. I visit 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh, nice. So you mentioned you have a YouTube channel, and I do see books behind you. Are those your books?
Some of them, yes. I have them here too. I do have, these are my books.
There you go. Okay, show us each one, because I'm a visual person.
Yes. Okay, so the first one is my immigration story. So it's from foreign student to Canadian citizen and everything in between.
Oh.
And it's my immigration journey, starting from being a student all the way to citizenship. And it's a memoir and a how-to of the sort to help people to understand, here's what a full journey looks like, because I wish I knew, right? And in between the story, because it's not just story talk, it's also, here's why my first visa got rejected. Don't do that. Here's where you need to find a checklist, right? Make sure you have a country-specific checklist and not just a general checklist, because I was using the wrong checklist. Here's where to find information on applications. And also, here's how to prep financially, because that's another thing that I think people are lacking. It's that you're thinking about paying your tuition and maybe accommodations, but you're not thinking about what does transit cost to get to school, to get back home? What does it cost to eat? All that stuff. So I help people to just have like a holistic view of here's what the journey looks like, and here are some things that I think you should do in order to prepare. You know,
Yeah.
as soon as you finish school, go do your language test, go do this, go do that, to help people to really prepare well and not avoid some of the stress that I endured having gone through the journey. So that's book number 1. This is a journal, so this is less of a content book, but this is I also have a mental health platform called Uncover Self. So it's more mental health based. So this is a journal, the Dear Self line. So this one says, Dear Self, I love you. Self-talk, positive self-talk. And it is a journal that has a blank table of contents. So in the table of contents, because I find that I write stuff and I don't remember where I wrote it or whatever.
Yes.
So every page is numbered and it has a table of contents to go and say, okay, on page 77, I went to Amplify Me and I took notes, and that's where the notes are for that one. So that's
I love that idea.
Yes. The other 2 are from my mental health platform, Uncover Self. So it's on the topic of shadow work, the deep inner work that we need to do to uncover our authentic self.
Yeah.
So this is book 1, which is more of a how-to on how to do shadow work, what shadow work is, everything you need to know about shadow work, prompts, meditation guides, different things. And then this is number 2 to that book, which is an adult coloring book and journal that is aimed at channeling a more empowered state from being stressed out. You're drawing from the wisdom of animals. So like a lion, when you think of a lion, like if you should think of one word in terms of a feeling, when you think of a lion, what do you think of?
Power.
Courage.
Courage, see?
Yeah.
So those are words that are in the book. So if in the moment I'm feeling fearful, I'm feeling scared, then you find that on the feeling wheel, and then you go to the animal wisdom wheel and you say, I want to feel courageous. I want to feel powerful. Which animal is that? That's the lion. Then you go and color a lion page and listen to affirmations, and you can do journaling prompts with that to help evoke a more empowered state.
So I'm hearing you've just weaved in personal development into every part of the journey of being an immigrant. Oh, and I have to show this. David says interesting. Like just it is so interesting. Thank you, David.
Hi, David.
Can you tell us what inspired more of this side? Like, why write books about personal development when usually we just do personal development?
I know. So, I mean, I've always wanted to be an author, and this happened to be my first book, the Canadian Immigration one. But I have also, like I think most people, have had hard times in their life. And like I said, you can't run away from your problems. And so I had an extremely traumatic experience back in 2019 that broke me. And I realized that at that point, I was already burnt out. The previous speaker was talking about burnt out because immigration is so stressful that the focus that you have to put into it, the emotional toll, all of that stuff will just drain you. Right. So then finally, I'm a citizen. Yay. And then life hits, then I have a kid, then there's COVID. And I wasn't okay. And I realized I thought that meditation was going to solve my problem. Honestly, I just need to meditate more. And I always thought to myself, why am I the way I am? Why do I take this long to get over whatever problem? Why do I ruminate so much about this problem? Why does this particular thing bother me? And that's how I came across shadow work. And shadow work now meditation is a component of it, but it's also doing the inner work to find out what in your childhood caused you to now react to somebody saying the word blubber. Right? For example, right? What experience did you have that is causing you to take longer to heal if somebody makes fun of you, right? So then now I had to go and do that deep work to get over the traumatic experience. And I said, like, everybody should know about this. I should shout this from the mountaintops. And so then I wrote a book. I think my whole concept, even though my channel is As Told by Canadian Immigrants, but it's As Told by Experience, right? Because I think that there's so much that we can learn from each other. And so I wrote my second book on shadow work. And then while doing that book is released, is published, I'm still working through my trauma. I started to color. especially there was one particular trauma event along my trauma journey that I was numb, but I needed to be present. And so I just colored, and it was so freeing because I was just coloring. I wasn't thinking about anything, nothing. And that's where the book number 3 came in. And I wanted to be able to say, right now, I feel really horrible. I want to feel better. But sometimes it's hard to think of that better state within ourselves. But I can think about it outside of myself. I can think about the beauty of an owl. I can think about the courageous spirit of a lion. And I can think about that and help, just thinking about that, channel that better feeling within myself. And so all of this is as told by experience. Everything that I've done is from lived experience and things that I think that people would benefit from knowing, not keep it to myself.
The last bLU talk that I did was about, how did I word it? Something about the beauty in the day. And it was basically talking about using your experience in those moments of blah, of the struggle, to actually write the notes. Because that version of you is the perfect version of you to write down what it actually looks like, what it actually feels like, what you're actually thinking, the actions that you're taking, the belief systems that you have. Because now that is the golden material that is going to help you identify how you've shifted and how you can help other people in the future, when future you has figured out how to switch those exact things into the equal and opposite, which is what's helping you now.
Yes.
But until you identify what that is, it's really hard on the other side to try to go back and identify it. So I love that you're taking this experience of the heartache. I'm just going to call it that, of going through immigration. Yeah. And you're not just teaching people about immigration, but you're teaching them the personal, mental growth side of all of it, inside out and beyond.
Yes.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
So where did you get your inspiration in order to be able to know that anything is possible? Who gave that to you in your history?
Wow, who did? I don't know. Probably my parents, my mom, maybe. I don't know. God-given.
Because it's so consistent, that state for you. Going through something difficult and continuing to believe that you can achieve whatever you're perceiving is your potential.
Yeah. And I think Laura probably hit the nail on the head just now when she said your past self can help to inform your present. And even when I was going through that trauma moment, what I tried to do was to remember that like if I went through something similar in the past, I'm okay now from that one, right? So I think going through life experiences, but also I think I tried to learn a lot through observation and other people, learn from other people's mistakes, learn from other people's victories as well. I try to plug in a lot to personal development content. You won't find me reading a fiction book, but I'll read a personal development book and learn from what others have done. I mean, I've seen my mom. She had her own school. She opened her own school. She had it, and she did it. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people probably would have talked her out of it. And so I think just observing from people around me, and I don't think I was probably low key afraid to fail, but I was also open to it, and I have a lot of support from my family, my mom, my dad, my sister. If I fall, I think they'll catch me. So I think that, and I try to fail fast. If something's failing, I try anyways. So hopefully that answers the question.
Wow. So that's there. So knowing that you have that consistent support allows you to take greater amounts of emotional risk is what I'm hearing.
I think so. Yes.
That's beautiful. Not everyone has that.
No.
So I celebrate it for you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Celebrate.
Exactly. It's like you have to take those moments to celebrate it.
Absolutely.
Especially when you're into entrepreneurship now.
Oh, yeah.
and how many people are telling you to go get a real job, quote unquote, and you're like, this is 4 or 5 jobs.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny enough. So I have my support system, but my dad is kind of like a job thinker, right? So when I did leave the corporate world, I didn't tell him. So I knew I had the support. I knew if I had to go home, if it didn't work out for me and I had to go home, I have a home to go home to. Right? He'll at least take me in.
Yeah.
But I didn't tell him until after, because I wasn't trying to have anybody to talk me out of it. So yes, I have my support system and I use it well. I try to use some autonomy as well, and I put a lot of faith in God and His ability to also help me through and catch me if I fall.
So faith has been a deep part of your
Absolutely.
drive in life.
Absolutely, 100%. I think without faith, without God, it could have easily been the complete opposite of what everything is right now. Completely, easily. Yeah.
But I'm also hearing a lot of faith within yourself, of your own abilities, of your inner drive. There's a lot of drive there.
Yeah. I believe in myself. I do trust myself, that because I know my abilities. Do I doubt myself sometimes? Yes, absolutely. Right. And I do get scared of some of the risks that I do take. But I try to believe in myself. Or try to believe in whatever I'm doing anyway. And then I guess we'll see how it turns out. Usually. Yeah. And I don't try to do things on my own. I've had coaches and mentors, courses, accountability, different things in the past. That's one thing I don't shy away from. I don't shy away from investing in personal development, even if it's that of a coach, meditation coach, therapy, book. I had a book coach, different things to help me to get to where I want to. I'm not trying to rely on my own experience or understanding the whole way.
Yeah. So then you wrote a bunch of books, but has writing been something that naturally comes to you, or did you have to fight yourself to write your first book? Can you tell us about that experience a little?
No, it was pretty seamless. So in school in Jamaica, very colonial school system, right? So I went to an all-girls colonial-ish school, and we had to do English language and English literature all the way to grade 11, right? Literature forced us to read fiction books, which I know why I thought I didn't like reading, but I just didn't like reading a co-called boy. I don't want to know about that. So in school, I had to write papers and stuff like that for literature, and I did pretty well. I liked writing. I liked using words. I liked reading what I wrote. Similarly, when I got to university level, and then my communications teacher, when I was studying here in Canada, project management, commended me on my final project that it was very well written. So I felt like I liked writing, and I had the goal of wanting to write a book. And when you want to write a book, like I said, because I seek counsel and coaching, I didn't try to figure out the process, reinvent the wheel on my own. Somebody has written a book before, and they've documented somewhere, right? So then you start with an outline. Then from the outline or the table of contents is what it will be eventually. You have your structure of your book, so now you just need to write. And my first book, I chose something that I could write about with my eyes closed. And so it was a very very nice experience. And I got the first book out rather quickly, but not quickly the process of the physical book, but not it. I mean, it was years of learning and whatever to be able to just write freely. So it was very enjoying the experience. I think one thing that people don't underestimate is after you do all of the writing and the publishing and all that stuff, you have to market it. So that's the second part that you don't really think about. But going through the process, I had no problems trying to figure out how to write it. And then the second and third book, when it comes to because I'm very multi-talented. So I can do the graphic part, I can do the writing part, but sometimes just because I can doesn't mean I should. So for the second and the third book, I get a graphic artist to help me with the cover, put it all together. I give them the inspiration. I'm like, you take it and tell me what it will be. So I think that outsourcing was helpful sometimes, but overall, it was a very enjoying experience.
Wow. It seems to me like part of your genius is communication. Like the way that you speak, the way you articulate, the level of eloquence that you have, your comfort with writing. I mean, it's like a perfect mixture of what you need in order to get your message out into the world in a way that actually works for you.
Thank you.
Pretty profound.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah,
I learned
like,
that. Now I'm learning about myself through you.
Yeah, you're totally in your wheelhouse.
Yes.
Thank you.
Which isn't always what we see when entrepreneurs or change makers are trying to share their message. Because half the time they're doing it because they're told they should do it. But yet we also see people who were never great at writing all of a sudden become writers because they knew that they needed to share their message, and this was a way that would do it and get the outcome that they wanted.
Yeah.
So the result was something that pulled them beyond the tension of not wanting to start, but yet it became enjoyable. So you speak, but did you always speak? Did you like speaking in front of people, or were you nervous at all?
So my mom, my mom was my principal.
Oh, okay.
Which is a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
But she ensured that we were well-rounded. Me and my sister and all the students. So we literally did karate, swimming, synchronized swimming, music. And through that, now we would do a lot of performances at music festivals or at church. I would have to read the first reading. So she would put us in environments that in the time I didn't want to read, right? I thought I was nervous. I had to make sure I knew all the big words. I don't mess it up. But in hindsight now, that was a lot of foundational work that she put inside of me to be able to give me the ability to now be okay with it. Like I in school, I was an okay presenter, and in architecture school, I don't know if your school system was set up like ours, but we had critique every 2 weeks. So whatever we designed, we had to put it up and we had to present it to the whole class, which was always a nerve-wracking experience. And so all of these things that were painful in the time, I'm grateful for it now that it's done. I'm grateful for mom telling me I had to read the first reading at church and participating in the music festival. I did poetry, and I did a poem where I had to play two people. So I had like one half of me was that, and I had to do both parts.
Yeah.
So I think all of that helped to put me in this place now where I'm a comfortable speaker. Do I get nervous? Absolutely. If I have to go on stage and stuff like that. And I'm now getting into more on stage stuff, like in a professional setting. School always kind of made us do that. But I think all of that was foundational in helping me to be where I am.
What helps you get over the nerves of being on a stage then?
Nothing. I just get there. It's there until I'm on stage, and then I'm comfortable once I get into it. And there's a good crowd too. But once it's just the before that's usually I have those jitters. And then once I start, I feel okay.
Good. I like hearing the stories of it doesn't last forever.
No.
I remember the first time that I told my story on stage, half my family didn't even know. Like this was the first time anybody public was hearing about it. And I thought that my whole career in my business was over because I started like ugly crying. Mascara's running down my face. I'm going like all of that with the microphone in my hand. And I've been on the stage since I was 4. So like the stage itself didn't scare me, but the vulnerability was scaring me.
Yeah.
But then having that experience made it easier to do it next time. But then my personal experience was a wonderful one because afterwards, every single person at that audience, except for 2, because they're not touchy people, came up to hug me and say thank you. And if I didn't have that loving experience, I don't know if it would have been as easy the second time. But that's also why choosing your audience is also important.
Yeah.
Or if you're not a visual person and you just want to hide the whole time, maybe you just start with voice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Work your way into it.
Yeah.
So Kristina, before we run out of time, I want to make sure that we know where to find you and your favorite way to communicate. So
you can find me on any platform at As Told by Canadian Immigrants. So that's the website, that's YouTube, that's podcast. It's As Told by Canadian Immigrants. At some point in the future, I will have KristinaMcPherson.com. I already have the domain. We're going to tag it to that. So you can have Kristina plus the As Told by Canadian Immigrants. And I mean, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Kristina McPherson, PMP. And yeah, I think those ways you can find me if you look those ways. Instagram, As Told by Canadian Immigrants, it's all there.
Awesome. And then, of course, I love to hold space at the end of an interview in case there's something on your mind or in your heart that you wanted to share with people. So this is the space. If there's something that you would like to share, what would you love to say?
Well, one thing came to mind just now when you were talking about stage and stage presence is that I got a lot of strength from Brene Brown when she shared, vulnerability and the person in the arena. Like, of course, she used Teddy Roosevelt's quote, but I knew it because of Brene.
Mm-hmm.
Is that because, being a YouTuber, putting myself out there, I get the good and the bad. It's more good than bad, but there will be people who will say bad things. And I try to channel strength from, if you're not in the arena, then your opinion is a pinch of salt, So I try to believe in what I do and gain strength from powerful quotes like that, and of course focus on it. There's more good than there is bad, so try not to let the bad consume me or consume you. I wish I could read the entire quote right now because that would be so inspirational. But the essence of it is that the man in the arena is who has the courage to do it, and the person who is outside of the arena throwing shade at the person in the arena really has no place because you're not in the arena. So unless you're in the arena,
I have the internet right in front of me, right?
I know.
Do you want me to read it? We have about a minute and a half.
Let's do it.
So I found this one. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out the strong man that stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually, the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails with daring greatly. Oh, that's the name of her book. Got it. Okay. So that this place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. That was so good. Oh, I'm so glad you got me to look that up. That was beautiful.
That quote, yes, is that. And to all the people who are trying to make it, it's not the critic who counts. Just keep going.
And as a reminder, that is Theodore Roosevelt. But give credit where credit is due. Thank you.
Yes.
No, I had never even heard of Brene until I did a talk about vulnerability. And then somebody was like, did you learn that from Brene? And I was like, who's Brene? The roundabout way you learn these things sometimes.
Yes.
I want to take this moment to say thank you so much, Kristina, for sharing your books and sharing your heart. And of course, your experience being a Canadian immigrant. So glad you're here in Canada.
Same. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I do invite you to stay for the next few minutes because I like to do a bit of a recap of our favorite moments.
Yes.
And I'm going to start with Christopher, and I'm going to ask if I can just go and come back for a moment, and you two have some fun, and I'll be right back. So Christopher, tell us something that stood out to you during our conversation today.
I mean, the thing that stands out to me about your journey is your mother continued to put you in uncomfortable positions at a very young age, and she had the foresight to know that would propel you and serve you powerfully in the future, which is why I asked my original question, right? Which was, where did you get the inspiration from?
Yeah.
And your thing, your mother cared enough and trusted you enough, and she saw enough inside of you to put you inside of moments that were bigger than you, and then allowed you the space to grow into them.
Yeah. Yes. And until you asked me that question, I've never really put any thought to it. Like, how are you the way? That's my shadow work, that undone shadow work that I need to go do, because now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really the foundation of it. So thank you, Mom.
Yeah, I mean, it's profound. I mean, you're lucky to have that kind of support. And the thing that I love about what you're doing with your life is that, yes, you've had that support, but you're honoring the support that you were given. Right? It's a little bit different when you're given a lot and then you take that and do nothing with it. But you're taking the love, the support, the guidance, the direction, the criticism, and you're spinning more golden thread with what you've been given. It's pretty profound.
Thank you. I try. I did. No, I don't. I'm not a what do you call it? Self-made nothing. I definitely got here through a lot of support. I think when in the beginning, at the front of my book, I was like dedicated to my family and all the generous souls who helped me along the way.
I love it.
Yes.
That's beautiful. So, Kristina, did you share something that stood out to you during our conversation today?
Well, I think what stood out to me is also what stood out to Christopher, because Christopher mentioned it. It's just that I never really sat and thought about where did this inspiration come from, right? I thought about like, how can I do so many things? Because this is also half of my story. I'm a lifeguard. I've gotten real estate licensing and all kinds of stuff. Where did that come from? But now I of course have to definitely credit my mom for putting me in positions that at the time were uncomfortable, but in hindsight were just part of my foundation. So now it's standing out to me. That's something that I've never really put much thought to. So thank you, Christopher.
You're welcome.
Ooh, okay, what's standing out to me is earlier when you were talking about your 2 books of personal development and doing shadow work, you had mentioned one question in a list of questions, and I wrote it down.
Oh.
It says, why am I the way I am? And guess where our conversation went? And the insight that you had was explaining some of why you are the way that you are.
Yes, full circle.
I love moments like that.
Yes. Perfect.
Yeah, I mean, teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Absolutely.
Exactly.
The combination and collections of souls here are here to serve you powerfully.
Yes.
And thank you for being honest and transparent. And, you're very engaging. And the way that you use language and the honoring that you give and the excitement that you have about your journey is very infectious.
Thank you. So I'm on the right track is what you're saying, right? Sometimes you never know.
Is we're on our 3rd hour and you kept me thoroughly engaged in your story.
Awesome. Well, that's good to know. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that with me too. And it was great to be here. This was a nice, fun chat. I wasn't nervous at all.
Can you show me? Okay, there's one of your books that had a nice, colorful image on the front, but I'm pretty sure there was like half of the image was one style and the other half was something else. Yes, that one. Okay, because I'm creating an image for my podcast and I wanted it something-ish like that.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I was like, I just wanted the inspiration again.
Yes, there it is.
Awesome. So I want to say thank you again, Kristina, for being here and sharing all kinds of different facets of who you are with us.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you for having me. It was great to be here.
You're welcome. We will chat soon.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So we have our next guest behind the scenes. Monique, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. Awesome.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you again, Laura.
I love those glasses.
Thank you. They're my attempt
look at me.
at like a stylish librarian. That's the
vibe it's giving me.
Thank you.
My daughter just bought sunglasses yesterday, and they're kind of like that, but they remind me of the pixelated ones from the memes.
Oh,
Not like we need that pair. Yeah. We bought it. Okay, Monica, I think you know my not so secret question here. If you could have other people describe you in 3 words,
yeah,
what would you love those 3 words to be?
Number one would be open. I always try to give, particularly because I work with people at their most vulnerable, right? I'm a hospitalist. When you meet me, you're usually having your worst day or your family members having their worst day. And I want to walk into that room and be an open space. I don't want to put up walls. I want people to feel that I'm open and easy to approach and talk to, and that this person is here to help. And so I try to bring that with me kind of everywhere I go, because that openness just fosters your relationships in every part of your life, right? Your personal relationships, your work relationships, your friends' relationships, if you can keep yourself open. So that would be the first one. And the second one, I always do try to bring a little bit of light and like longevity to the situation. Whatever it is, things can be heavy, but finding a moment of levity, a moment where like, wow, all of this may be going on, but can I just find a moment where maybe I can chuckle a little bit, or I can breathe a little bit, I can give myself some space? Because it's not just, again, not just in my work, but in every day, like we all run at 10,000 miles an hour, right? Like you're moving this to this to this to that. Can you find 2 seconds to just like breathe, or like actually giggle at the dog that, you know, was walking down and did something funny, and just like give yourself that little mental break, because those small moments will get you through the day. And the third one I really hope people would describe me as is consistent. I try really hard to make sure that this is what you're getting, like at all points in time. It doesn't mean I can't change my mind, but what I mean by consistent is that if you ask me to be there, I'll be there. If I say I'm going to do something, even if it takes me a little while, I'm going to do it. I'm not that wild card. I have a 3-year-old right now. That's a wild card, right?
A little.
There's a little, like, you never know what's going to happen, right? And that's not who I want to be. I want to be someone who's pretty consistent, that you know what you're going to get, what you're asking for. And when I show up, it's not going to be like, who's she going to be today? So yeah, open, light, and consistent.
Ooh. Yeah, but you also use the word levity. I don't think I had heard that word in a sentence before. I like it though.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I like when people use words that you're just you're not expecting.
Yeah.
Because we tend to hear like, I want to be seen as kind and caring, compassionate, authentic, you know, all the typical things, which this question is also a research question for me. Eventually, like I'll do a TED Talk and write a book and stuff about it, but it teaches me so much about who you are before you tell me who you are. And I like that, because then I know what to expect, and we see it weave into everything. And you've already kind of started on my next question anyway, but I'm going to ask it.
Yeah.
How do these words, open, light, and consistent, how do they play a role in the core message that you have for people?
So I teach people kind of 2 main things. I teach people about hospitals, hospital systems, how to navigate them, how to advocate for themselves, right? And like I said, I'm a hospitalist. I only work in hospitals. I always find it to be a really nice compliment when patients ask, "Oh, where's your office? I'd love for you to be my doctor, but you can't make an appointment to see me." I'm there in a place that is supposed to catch you when bad things happen, when you're scared, when you're in pain, when you don't have what you need at home, right? And so I teach people that. And the other thing I teach people is how to think about, like, not just your life, but the elders in your world, their life, and how do you care for people towards their sunset years, understanding that as we age, we may come into a little bit more slowing down, a little disability. There may be diagnosis that we're not expecting, and things can get a little bit hard to navigate. And those are heavy topics.
Yeah.
Like, I work in emotional weight. Well, when I think about it, I walk into a room and I have to be able to immediately gain people's trust while simultaneously disarming them, because navigating healthcare, navigating aging, navigating family relationships, navigating pain comes with being on guard, right? Immediately. And so I have to be able to walk into a room and make you trust me. And then I have to be able to disarm you a little bit and help you bring down those walls so we can build this relationship, right? And so for me, those 3 words are really how I view my practice, and how I want to be seen, but also the 3 things that have helped me through my years of practicing medicine gain those really thoughtful and helpful therapeutic relationships with patients and their family members. So if I walk into a room and you're having the worst day, you're having chest pain, your dad had a heart attack, your son fell down and broke his leg, and I walk in like this, I'm closed off.
Yeah.
So you are going to keep your wall up. And this immediate relationship has started off bad. But if I walk in and I can open myself up a little bit to show you that, hey, I'm here. I'm a person to, we're going to be partners in this, then maybe that can disarm you a little bit. And even when you're having your worst possible day, there's really no benefit in just sitting in that weight all the time, right? Because you're not going to get the endurance that you need, both physical and emotional endurance, to get through whatever's happening. So if you can find a space to breathe, find a place to chuckle, it gives you those little breaks. And it does help you to build that emotional endurance to continue to go through the thing that's happening. When you are just bogged down and bogged down and bogged down and bogged down, it's hard. I think we've all been in spaces in our life where we feel overwhelmed and it doesn't stop, right? It's like a wave that just keeps knocking you and knocking you. And what happens on the beach? You get pulled in, you get knocked out, you get pulled in, and you can't catch your breath. And I find that it can be that same type of relationship. And then the third thing is consistency. I have to work with a bunch of nurses, a bunch of different doctors. I have to be a really consistent person in my work with my colleagues. But then also, you don't want, like I said, a wild card when you're going through your bad day. Like, you don't want to know that, like, you never know what you get when she walks in the room. She may be nice. She may be in a mood. Like, you should know that I'm going to be like this. I'm going to be this pretty consistent calming force every time that you see me. Even when you're having like the worst day of your life and you feel like exploding, I'm not going to.
Right? Thank you. I have a question. So who in your history taught you to put an intense amount of value on emotional intelligence?
So I think it's a little bit innate in me. I've always been, even as a little kid, really aware of everybody's feelings and what's going on. I was the kid who didn't just run into a birthday party. I kind of like hung back a little bit and took stock and noticed what was going on. And it's been a tool that has helped me. Being more emotionally intelligent has helped me throughout everything that I've done. But as I've grown into my work, I will say that I had I'll give one person's name because one isn't a great example, but 2 attending physicians when I was a resident. I'm sorry, 1 resident and 1 attending physician who taught me simultaneously what I wanted to be and what I didn't want to be. Right. And I worked with a resident who was very reactive. And she was very standoffish and she was very just negative. When she walked into a room, everybody immediately was like, oh, not her again. We all know people like that, right? But it made that work so much harder. We were working in a county hospital And that's already an at-risk population. That's a lot of people, in a place that maybe doesn't have all the resources. That hospital that I was working at also had a prison ward, so it's like we had patients of every different walk of life, but everyone reacted to that resident the same way because she was just all of those things I didn't want to be. And then I had an attending working with us on that team, and he was the exact opposite. He was consistent, always a calming force. We would be in the ICU, bells are going off and everything's happening. And he would find a moment to be like, oh my goodness, that was so funny. That thing that just happened. Like, you have to breathe a little bit, Monique, And at the end of that month, I had a really good example of who I wanted to be and who I definitely did not want to be.
Well, the irony here is that she taught you consistency because she was consistent. At least she was consistent in the way that she was functioning. And he brought you levity through his vivacious behavior.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He was his name was Dr. Douglas Hegstad in Southern California. And he was just not only a joy to work with as someone who was learning from him, but I could see how he immediately disarmed every wall that patients had up, and there was a case we had where the resident started the case and everything was going south emotionally, right? Now everyone is upset. People are up in arms. The patient is escalating. And she stormed out the room. And then Dr. Hegstad walked in. And immediately I watched him one by one working on these people to break down all the damage that was done, essentially, and get to a space where a conversation could be had. And really, my work is conversations. I think TV does a really fabulous job in making physicians' work seem like it's all scalpels and ventilators. But my work is conversations. My work is to tell you the thing that's happening, and then get your take on what that means for you in your life, and then tell you my best plan, and then get your take on how you accept that plan or you don't accept that plan and why. It's not just that people don't do things, it's that people do things for a reason. It's like once I learned that I stopped rephrasing it as like, oh well, they're not taking their medication, right? Oh, they don't want that surgery. And started rephrasing it as they have a reason for this. They're declining this because he stopped taking his medication because it was too expensive. They don't want that surgery because they can't miss work, right? It's not that people don't do things. It's that people do things for a reason. So find out what that reason is.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
There are countless examples of why we forget to take the medication. My husband couldn't afford one medication. Another medication made him high at work, and you're not supposed to be high while driving. And he was like, oh my God, yeah. I didn't realize this was happening. Like, this cannot happen. Yeah. And then for my medication, there was just so many symptoms on the side that it was not worth any benefit that I was getting from the medication. So we just stopped the medication. It's like, there's so many stories.
Yeah.
And
so I think understanding that like, people are doing something for a reason. It's not that they're not doing something. And that also makes me like a better parent too.
Yeah.
That, especially my kids are still fairly young, to figure out like why they're doing something has made a big difference in my patience. So it works at every venue.
Yeah. Why did you get into medical work and specifically a hospitalist?
Yeah. So when you finish residency, here in the States, you can go on to specialize further. First, you graduate medical school, and then you pick the specialty that you want to do. And I went into internal medicine, and then you can specialize further. So you can become like a cardiologist, a nephrologist, an oncologist, right? It's the same thing with surgeons. you do general surgery and then you decide to become a pediatric surgeon, right? Or, and so I couldn't figure out what I wanted to specialize in. And I thought about doing critical care, which is ICU work, which I loved, but I lost 5 to 7 pounds every time I was in the ICU, which is great for your gene size, especially if you're living in Southern California, right? But it was tantamount to me understanding that that was not something my body could continue to do, that like I just didn't have the ability to withstand that high intensity work. It was stressful to me and my life. So there was that. I put that to the side. Then I thought about being an endocrinologist or an infectious disease doctor. And it just didn't seem to really pan out professionally when I met with people. And I was like, well, where would I really go with those? So I ended up doing a non-clinical fellowship. I ended up doing a fellowship in public health and working and learning about healthcare systems and healthcare policies. And that's really the thing that determines the health of a population and the health of people. Like, I think we really think we've gotten into this idea that like your health is specifically what you do and only you do, what you put in your mouth. And if you get up and do your exercise, you will be healthy. And that's not really the case. Healthcare and health is really policy driven in lots of ways. So, I live here in the States. And so things like access to healthcare, how well someone has access to healthcare determines what their health outcomes are going to be. Access to mental health care, but then access to foods, access to firearms, right? So if you have access to firearms, you're more likely to be injured by firearms, right? So understanding that how we govern our health really makes a big difference in the health of the populace and also in the person. And then how does the smaller systems that works within the bigger system work as well? So like all the things that go into delivering care in a hospital is really what fascinates me. And so that's where I did my fellowship. I ended up specializing non-clinically and staying in hospital-based care because it sounds weird. I love hospitals. I know that like nobody likes going to, I call it the DMV of healthcare, right?
Yes.
It is. Nobody wants to be there, but everybody shows up there at some point in time, right? There's way too many people and everyone's trying to leave as soon as possible, right? But what I find really fascinating about hospitals is there are these places where people come in like their most vulnerable state. And then there are other people who are just there who know what to do. Right. And that's like, to me, that's amazing that there can be this building open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, that somebody in that building is going to know what to do. And I love working with other physicians and specialists. I love working with nurses and watching them advocate for their patients and teaching people the things they've learned over time. I love seeing life-changing things happening. And I love watching families grow in hospitals. I think that's great. But I also really love helping people with the last part of their life and giving their families room and support to be with them, because none of us should be alone when we enter the world, and none of us should be alone when we leave. And if I can help a family really do that a little bit better and feel a little bit more support, to me that's a huge part and a huge honor that I get to do in my life. And I like the camaraderie of hospitals. I get to hang out with my friends and, we're talking about interesting cases, and then, you're in the doctor's lounge and everyone's kind of going over the things of the day. It's a really fun environment that's community-based to work in. And so I decided to stay in hospital medicine and help people in hospitals.
Nice. You said that you like to focus on health policy and how you care for people. I'd like to get a little bit clear understanding of what you mean by care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in my work, I often have this conversation with people, with administrators who will say things like, well, can the doctors see more patients? Can the nurses see more patients? And I say, well, yeah, they can see more, but can they care for more people? Those are two very different things, right? In order to care for somebody, that means that you have to not only view the thing that's happening to them, but you have to view the person and the world that person lives in, that the thing is happening in, right? So when I take something like a broken foot, right? I think we've all seen a teenager walking around with those boots, after they get injured at some practice or doing something silly with their friends at the mall, right? You break a foot, you break a bone at age 17. The thing that's happening to you and the world that you live in is very different than if you break a bone in your foot at age 77.
Yeah.
Right? It's not just that you may be younger and you have more energy and your muscles are, a little bit stronger and things like that. But your friends kind of probably think it's cool. You can navigate a little bit better. Your mom is driving you places. If your mom's not driving you, the bus is going to take you. The school bus is not going to take you. Your friend's mom is going to take you. The school legally has to accommodate you. It's just a very different feeling and world that person's living in. Versus at 77, where like maybe you were driving yourself. And now, in addition to a broken foot, you've lost your ability to drive. So now, how are you going to navigate the world? Who's going to help you get around? Who's going to get your groceries, right? Who's going to get you to your doctor's appointment? Because you were doing all those things yourself. And then maybe the pain medication might interact with something else, another medication that you were taking, versus if you're 17, if you got any pain meds, you probably weren't on anything else, but maybe they just gave you a Tylenol, and you were okay. And then also now this your safety of, do I need a walker to get around? Am I more prone to falling? My kids don't think it's funny, whereas like 17, your friends thought you were cool and funny with a broken foot. But at 77, your kids realize that, nope, this is not funny. So how are we going to help dad? Which means now people who maybe were not as active in your world, or maybe still can't be as active in your world, are trying to figure out how to support you. Right? So to really care for someone, you have to understand like the world they live in, the body they exist in, the support system that they have, the finances that go along with it, what's in their community, and what they expect for the next thing, right? Because at 17, you break your foot, you expect I get this boot off, and then I'll be able to get back to my life. Maybe at 77, you're like, I don't know if this is going to change how I move forever, right? Oh, or like people, I see often is adult children want their parents to really be active. Like, mom needs to be walking like 2 miles a day. And mom is like, I am perfectly happy being in my house with my cat. And I go back and forth, up and down the block to get the mailbox. And that is the thing that I do.
Yeah.
Can you get me back to be able to be at home with my cat and get to the mailbox, Doc? I'm not trying to run the Boston Marathon, And so, yeah, health policy determines how we care for people, because the things that happen in hospitals is not care. The thing that happens in hospital is treatment. The thing that happens in communities where people are going to go off and really get better, right? That's the care. And those are the things that are dictated by policy and finance, how you can access things, what's in your community, what's available to you legally, what do people have to accommodate versus not accommodate, what is research going into, to say like, oh, we're researching this cancer because we find that we can be helpful to people, but Also, should we be researching another movement disorder? Should we be researching car safety, right? All of those things are really what determines the care of a person. What I do in a hospital is treatment.
Treatment with care,
Yes.
with emotional care.
With good care. But I try to give people the idea that like the average hospital stay in the United States is about 4 to 5 days, 4.5, 5 days, right? So if you meet me for 5 days, there's still 360 days that I am not in your world in the year, right? And so all of the things that happen outside of the hospital are really the things that are going to determine how well you get back to your environment and how you want to be. And so those are really key, is how do we structure our communities to support people.
So are you advocating for certain changes in policy right now?
I don't do policy work right now. Right now, I'm really focusing on writing and teaching. I wrote my book, Prescription for Admission. I have it in the corner
Yeah,
there.
I was going to say, do you have it?
So here we go. So this is my book, Prescription for Admission.
Okay.
And you can get this anywhere where you buy books. But it's a patient-facing book about hospitals. And it starts really simple and talks about like, what is a hospital? And that sounds silly when I introduce that, but no, there's different types of hospitals for different things, right? So if you think of something as simple as a children's hospital,
yes,
right? They're set up and they have different equipment and different specialists than you would find in a hospital that doesn't care for children, right? And it's not that a hospital that doesn't care for children regularly can't care for your child, but you may be getting a different experience and you may be getting access to different things, right? Here in the States, we have the veterans hospitals, right? And that comes with a different set of finances than hospitals that are not funded by the VA system. So, Leah, what are hospitals? What types of hospitals? What are hospitals capable of? And then it goes into what you can expect in a hospital. Who's who, what's what are all those funny acronyms that they're yelling at each other in the hallway? Oh, a patient is NPO. Oh, let's do this thing stat. What are the tests that you're going to see? How you can advocate for yourself and your loved one. And then a really close friend of mine also contributed some mental health tips. She's a psychiatrist to help you really bolster your mental health and understand that is part of your hospital stay too. So things like tell us your psychiatric medications. Like those are very important. You shouldn't stop taking your antidepressant while you're in the hospital. You want to keep taking that. A drug and alcohol use. Be really open and honest because it can affect the things that are happening to you in a hospital. And so I'm really proud of it because it's a tool. I've made it a tool. Like someone once asked if it comes in hard copy. I said, no, I want it in paperback. I have places for people to write in. I want you to like shove it in your bag and roll it up and bring it to the hospital when you're visiting your loved one. Because I want it to be a tool. I want you to refer to it over and over again through your hospital stay to gain some confidence in what is really a really complicated and confusing system.
And I'm Canadian, so the whole U.S. system is even more confusing and
oh my goodness,
complicated for what I'm used to.
Yeah, I have colleagues from medical school who practice in Canada, who have said that yes, the book is also helpful in Canada because this doesn't really go into finances, but hospitals are hospitals, kind of on either side of the border. You're going to find, the tests are still going to be the same. The acronyms are going to be the same. But also you should know the same things about yourself, like know your medication list, know who your specialists are. Don't leave out things like food preferences and sensitivities, right? Like just because you're hospitalized, don't forget to tell us you're allergic to something. Like
I keep it in my phone now.
Yeah, see?
I had to write it for I was traveling somewhere and I have allergies and some of them are touch allergies. And so my daughter was like, do you want me to write the note for you, Mom? I was like, that would be great because I'm busy trying to do something else. So it's like emergency contact information, what I'm allergic to, and saying that I keep Benadryl in my phone just in case of emergencies.
Oh, that's
So
awesome.
if I tend to pass out, somebody goes to try to identify me, they see the note right away. They know that the medication is literally right in there.
Yeah.
They can help before somebody gets to me.
What you have done is something that I talk about in the book, and that is you have provided information. And information, people like to say information is power, information is key. In hospitals, in healthcare, information is safety. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again. Information is safety. The more information you can give me about yourself is the safer you are, because we're less likely to do something like if you're allergic to tape. Tape is a big allergy to people, right? Like there are lots of different types of tape. There are, and so, yeah, you don't want to like be sick from a bad GI bug and then have this like weird tape rash all over your body from all the different IVs, right? It happens. It's like one less thing you have to deal with and one less piece of discomfort. So you have furnished people with information, and information is safety.
I like that. And it was inspired by my mom. She has these 2 great big pill jars in the fridge, and there's some sort of label on it that tells paramedics to open them here in Nova Scotia, I guess. And then in the bottle, it has a list of all of her allergies, all of her medications, where her medications are kept, what kind of diagnoses she has, like her medical history. And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, why do you keep it in the fridge? She's like, apparently, if anything happens for like retired people, older people, my parents are much older now, that they'll look in the fridge to see what medications you're on in case they have any interactions. And I was like, that's really cool. I never knew that.
It's great.
So
It's
I'm like,
great
I'm
way
just
to
going
get
to
information.
in my phone, because if I'm out and about, who knows? Nobody knows me. Yeah.
So I have a question.
Yes.
And it's historical. What was your inspiration to become a doctor?
Mm-hmm.
So I am a child of immigrants here, and I often say that as a child of immigrants in the States, you only get to be a doctor or a lawyer. That's like my ongoing joke. Those are your 2 choices your parents will be happy with, right? Or engineer, doctor,
I was going
lawyer,
to say, what about engineering? Yeah.
right? Those are the 3 choices for child of immigrants here in the U.S. But no, in all honesty, I'm from a medicalized family in a way. My mother,
I could feel that.
Yeah, my mother's a retired critical care nurse. All her sisters are nurses. My older cousin is an oncologist. And I grew up in a world of women who were really capable and confident. And I don't think I ever thought of being anything else.
Okay.
That's not fully true. Let me rephrase that. I've always wanted to be a writer, which was really big for me when it came to writing my book. I was like, yes, I'm really living that part of my dream. And I feel like I have more in me to write. I have a lot of writing goals, but I was good at science and math, and it seemed to fall into place. And I didn't feel the tug for writing the way I do now when I was going through college. It was like, oh yeah, I would love to write one day, but I couldn't really see myself as doing anything else.
And thank you for sharing that. And do you think, because your mother was a nurse and nurses are heavily involved in the care side, that she gave you a living example, maybe not verbally, but energetically, in how she was going about her business? You sort of started to pick up on how important of a place to come from that care was.
Yes. So she was both implicit and explicit in how I should be as a physician. So when I started medical school, my mother gifted me 2 things. One was a watch that she got when she retired. And she said, I'd love for you to wear this on rounds, and you have it. And it's a beautiful watch. But the second thing she told me was, she said, I want you to hear what my teacher told me in nursing school. And her teacher, she was an older nurse. I can't really tell because I think back in the 70s, they all called all nurses in England sister. But so I don't know if she's a nun or not. But her name was Miss Honey. Funny enough, isn't that really sweet? And she said she would always tell us, everybody is somebody's sweetheart. Treat them like that. And she was very explicit when I started medical school. I want you to remember, everybody is somebody's sweetheart.
And was she like that as a mom?
Well, I have a Jamaican mother. So she was, Jamaican moms can be tough people. Very loving, but still very tough. Yes, definitely. My mom always treated, particularly the kids in the neighborhood, knew our home was the safe spot to be. Like there were always kids at our house, including like randomly we would come home and there would be a kid who was sick, whose parents asked my mom to pick them up, who would be at our house. And she did. She treated all the kids. She treated everyone as they were loved, right? Their parents loved them. They were somebody's sweetheart. And so she treated them exactly like that. But I know that that's how she treated her patients, because it was something that I heard her say. Like, I remember as a kid, anytime she talked about nursing school, anytime she talked about her teacher, Miss Honey, she always said that. She always said, she taught me, everybody is somebody's sweetheart. And when I started medical school, she said that. She said, I want you to remember, every patient you come across is somebody's sweetheart, and you need to treat them like that. And I have tried my best to live up to that. Tried my very best. I will say, I think I'm at like 99.8%. But people can be very hard to see the sweetheart in. But as I get older, as the gray hairs like seep in, two things happen. One, less people ask me if I'm really the doctor, right? So now they see the gray hair and they're like, okay, she's old enough and weathered enough to be here. But the other thing that happens is you meet so many people and you see so many people's life stories that you really learn that this snippet of who this person is right now is nothing in comparison to their whole life. And I've learned to give so much leeway to people, so much credit that I don't know what they're going through. I don't know. And they don't know what I'm going through either, right? You never know. And there are certain things I think back as when I was a younger doc, particularly with older folks, I used to get really like emotionally hurt when people couldn't live with or care for their parent, right? Like the parent would be in the hospital after a fall, after this, and it's like, well, who do they live with? They live alone. Oh, are they able to live with you? I can't, right? And like in my 20s, and again, I come from a West Indian household, caring for your elders is just kind of very different. And I've always seen this idea. My grandmother kind of lived with one of her children or another one of her children at the time. If she wasn't, there were caretakers caring for her. And I was always kind of like, how could that be? And now I've gotten older and I'm like, I see it. I see how that could be, right? Because not everyone has that bandwidth.
No. So before we run out of time, I just want to make sure that we know where to find you. And of course, your favorite way to communicate.
Oh, I get so caught up.
I know, we have about 60 seconds. I'm like,
okay. You can find me on my website, which is drmoniquenugent.com, drmoniquenugent.com. But you can find the book, Prescription for Admission, anywhere you buy books, Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, Apple Books, stuff like that. I also have a podcast by the same exact name, Prescription for Admission, where I'm diving into hospitals, who's who in hospitals, and how you can get the most out of working with each of these professionals. And like I said, it's same exact name, Prescription for Admission. Find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Like and subscribe. I'm practicing saying that. Give us a 5-star rating. And it's just, finishing up season 1 pretty soon. It's great information. It's really interesting people. And you guys have been great. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. I'm going to call this the official close of the main interview. I do invite you to stay for the next few minutes, as I like to take this time just to recap, share some of our favorite insights. But I'm actually going to start just by asking you what I usually ask you, but I was like, it's not going to fit in the main interview. Was there something that was on your heart or in your head that you just needed to share with people?
Today, I think the thing that's has come out as we've spoken is space and grace. Those are my two favorite words that I tell people when they're going through something is give yourself space and grace to grow, to feel the thing that you're feeling, to be in the moment and the environment that you're in. And if you give yourself space and grace, then you can find a way to continue on.
Awesome. Okay, so Christopher, I'm going to start with you. What is something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
I mean, the thing that stands out for me about you and our conversation is the place where you come from. You have such a joyful heart.
Oh, thank you.
And you have such a caring nature. And my feeling is when you add joy plus care plus understanding, you can deliver the kind of love to your patients and to the hospitals and all the things that you're involved in a very deep, meaningful way. And it's really profound where you've come from and who you've become.
Thank you. That's great. That's really beautiful. Thank you. That makes me feel really seen right now.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I have to unmute myself. So Monique, what is something that stood out to you during our conversation?
What really stood out to me was how people are already doing the things that I'm out there trying to give, practice, get people to practice, right? You and your mom already know the vital part is that I got to give information, right? To keep myself and my loved ones safe anytime we're interacting with healthcare. And it's a lot of what I teach, a lot of what I write is not like ultra groundbreaking, but it is really helpful to hear it again and be like, oh yeah, I think this is what I need to be doing. I was on the right track. So it's always good to know that people are already doing the things they're doing.
Mm-hmm. I think the thing that stood out to me was what you shared here mostly was the space and grace. I can feel that in everything that you shared with us today, is that you were holding space for people to be themselves in a moment where it's very difficult to be a pleasant to be around, I guess, version of themselves. Because it's tough. You're being tough. Stretched to the edge of who you are in situations that you're not used to, with all these emotions that you don't even know how to label, let alone deal with. Yeah. So for you to hold that space for people is so important. And I also loved what you said. I want to say it right, that hospitals are for treatment and that communities are for care. Mm. That's like a mic drop moment. I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's something I fully believe.
Yeah. And we can tell from everything that you shared. I want to say thank you again, Monique.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. We will chat soon.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye, Monique.
So we do have our next guest behind the scenes. Jeremiah, just give me a thumbs up if you're ready to join us. We can hear just yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, Matt, you to stage now.
Does my microphone sound okay?
Yep, we can see you and we can hear you.
Okay.
Awesome. So I like to start off interviews with a weird question just to shake up any elevator pitches or notes that people write down, because I want to get to know you as a human being. So here's my question, Jeremiah. If you could have other people describe you in 3 words, what would you love those 3 words to be?
Visionary, transformational, and authentic.
Transformational. You knew those ones right off the bat.
Yeah, I've been watching some of the other podcasts and seeing what you guys have been doing. They've been really great. I've learned a lot.
So visionary, transformational, and authentic, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, of course, the follow-up is, how do these three words, visionary, transformational, and authentic, how do they play a key role in the core message that you have for people?
Well, I mean, I started at a very young age. I've been a natural lucid dreamer all my life, and lucid dreaming is one of the big keys that I'm teaching. It's part of it. It's not the whole picture, but I started having lucid dreams at a very young age and developed the ability to basically be able to get lucid within 5 minutes. I had thousands and thousands of lucid dreams. And for people who don't know, lucid dreaming is when you know that you're dreaming while the dream is happening. So at the moment that you become lucid, you become aware of the dream and you know that you're dreaming in that moment. Sometimes you can become aware you don't have any control. You're just semi-lucid. Sometimes you can become lucid with a little more control and you can kind of guide things a little bit. And then if you get really good at it, you can preset your intention and you can basically do anything that you want and accomplish your intention. That's the goal, is to actually have your intention prefixed and then accomplish it. So I started at a young age. So, probably 8, 9, really got into it at 13, 14, 16. I, wrote my first book at 16, started it at like 14. So that's, the visionary. I just I'm really a, visionary person.
You wrote your first book starting at 14 and it came out when you're 16?
Yeah. My adventures in lucid dreaming. I started teaching lucid dreaming at around 16, 17, while I was just still in high school, beginning of high school. And I needed some material to use. So I wrote that first book back then.
Wow.
My mind is blown.
Yeah, I mean it's so unusual, right? To be afforded the opportunity to know, one, who it is you are and what your gift is, and then two, to have the courage to be able to know that it has value and to push forward while you're in the middle of developing your personality and your sense of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I knew what my life path was at a very young age. The first time that I started having lucid dreams and started accomplishing my goals, and then got to the point where I could come out of my body, because there's dream yoga, there's lucid dreaming, there's outer body, there's all these different kind of perspectives of it. And when you get really good at it, you can basically just come out of your body. And, I got to the point where flying around, going under the sea, going to space, doing all these things, doing whatever you want, you just kind of get bored of doing that. So I started to use it for healing work, being able to go and build balls of energy and pass them into other people and things. At that point, that was obvious that that's my life path. I am definitely going to be teaching how to do this. And obviously that was so many years ago. But I've stayed on the path. I've written 8 books since then. So, I continue to, and then they're all based on lucid dreaming or some type of dreaming. Some of them are fiction. Some of them teach you how to do it. Some of them are more serious. So that's what, transformational, visionary.
Yeah. 8 books. Do you have any of the books beside you that we can see?
You know, I don't have, yeah, I do. I do have the ones that are coming out. I don't have the ones that are already published, unfortunately. But so I wrote this one, which is Convergence and the Love Code.
Okay.
This is my most recent work, and it's a fiction. It's all fiction, and it's based on AI. It's based on love code. It's a love story. It's also, you know, end of the earth story. You know, robots, these kinds of things. I mean,
Yeah.
And it has to do with alternate dimensions. It has to do with lucid dreaming. It has, you know, getting into different places and different portals. Quantum mechanics, basically quantum physics.
And did your parents have these kinds of skills? Like, where do you assume that these abilities and this awareness came from?
Well, my parents were very cool, very radical. And my father especially was really into the Egyptian Hermetic philosophy. And so I followed in those steps at a very young age, you know, probably 15. I started reading the books. There's 21 books. There's 7 in alchemy, 7 in astrology, and 7 in magic. I've read them all twice. And actually my book Manifestation Through Spiritual Power is kind of a condensed version of all those books kind of into one to sort of like get you started. And that's like a very serious, you know, book. That really got me on more of a serious path because I became an astrologer by doing that. I could read tarot, and you know, learning about the magic side, you know, being able to use your thoughts and emotions to be able to combine them, to be able to do the things that you want, to create things for healing, for manifestation, and that sort of goal. The Hermetic philosophy is an amazing philosophy. It's very different, you know, than a lot of the other ones. And, you know, there's, you know, Buddhist and Christian, and I mean, all of these philosophies, they're all the same. They all mix together and are saying the same thing.
Okay, so what were the names of these 21 books?
The names of them?
Yeah.
Well, there's I don't remember right off bat all
Meaning
of them.
like it comes as a series?
Yeah, it comes as a series. Spiritual, cosmic alchemy, mundane astrology, mental alchemy, organic alchemy. I mean, I'd have to look the rest of them up to get the names, but yeah, there's this. It comes in a series. Okay. You actually, you know, so the kind of story goes is Albert Benjamin was a visionary and a psychic, and he would come out of his body and communicate with the Brotherhood of Light on the astral plane in the dream world, or so to speak. Mm-hmm. And he it was always an oral tradition before he wrote them down into physical books style. It always had been passed by word of mouth before then. Wow. That's kind of how the story goes. And so what I went ahead and did is I actually turned all 21 of the books into audio. Now it's not the audio with like the AI we have today, because this was like years ago. So it's not as good, but still it's 21 books all into audio. I mean, it took me a very long time. I have all of them on my website. People can listen to them if they want to.
And what's your website?
So, you know, that got me started. Hi Dreamers, HIDreamers.com. And I've been posting a lot of stuff on Facebook. So, you know, everything that I do is authentic. It comes straight from my personal experience. All the artwork that I do, all the books that I write, all the teachings that I do comes from my personal, actual experiences that I've had in either lucid dreaming, outer body, meditation, brain heart coherence, as well as manifestation. And, I like to learn from myself from inside.
I understand that.
Yeah, it's really important to me to learn. I like to learn from outside as well, but you just, when you go inside and you have these experiences, nothing really can top it, because it's you. You know what's for you, what's right, what's wrong. You have somebody come and tell you there's so many things out there, how do you know whether it's real? Well, if it's coming from yourself, I think you get a pretty good idea.
So,
so you're saying, okay, go ahead.
When somebody's learning about lucid dreaming and out of body experiences and healing and these hermetic, I think I'm saying that right, philosophies, do you start people off with the lucid dreaming so they have some sort of control over their thoughts? Is that
absolutely
what the idea is?
Absolutely, because we spend 33% of our lifetime dreaming, whether we remember it or not. It's a natural occurrence. It's a very important thing. We have to do it. People who don't have dream cycles are generally schizophrenic. So it's a very important part of our life. And I like to start people out there because it's very natural. And whether you think you do it or you don't think you do it, if you focus on it a little bit, you look back, you've done it. You've had an experience. Everybody has had a few. And it's quite easy to get people, I have a very, very high success rate. I've taught thousands of people, and it's very, very easy, to get people to start having experiences. Now, whether they keep it up or not, it is not that. That's where it gets pretty difficult. You really do have to work at it.
And do you do dream interpretation?
Yeah, yes and no. Yes. The dream interpretation that I do is based on an astrological interpretation of dreams, based on your chart. So it's very personal. It's not a broad perspective. Like, if you dream of this, it means that, because one person's going to dream the two same things. It could mean completely separate things. So you really, in order to do the interpretation the way that I do it, you have to bring up the birth chart, start connecting that to the dreams, and start diving into your subconscious that way, because the dreams it's there, What we find is we have dream signs, which are reoccurring events, thoughts, feelings. They don't necessarily have to be people. They don't necessarily have to be things. They can be feelings, emotions. They can be circumstances. But if you write down 10 dreams, 5 dreams, I guarantee you're going to find a few dream signs.
And where do nightmares fit into this awareness that you have?
I have had people really break free of their nightmares. My feeling on nightmares is that your subconscious mind is trying to wake you up. It's trying to give you something so out of the ordinary that it wants you to wake up. It wants you to say, this is a dream. Because once you say this is a dream and you confront it, a lot of times those nightmares will go away. Now, on the other hand, it can be kind of scary. That's scary work sometimes. So, you can get in a dream and wake up and be in a nightmare and not have control, and it can be a little scary. Yeah, if you're going to work with nightmares and lucid dreaming, you really want to be persistent and have a coach. But it works.
I know as someone who has worked with people who have suffered from nightmares, that if you begin to start to interrupt their stress patterns, then the nightmares get less scary. And then
Yeah.
eventually those nightmares turn into what you're talking about, which is some state of lucid dreaming.
Yeah. And that's all very connected. I mean, the world is a scary place. The world is not a scary place. It depends how you perceive it. But when you're working through your deep emotions, you're going to find the things in the world that are directly connected to your dreams.
Yeah.
And if you can do this type of work, you can definitely work through it. And you can turn that, especially for like post-traumatic stress,
Yes.
for a lot of things. I mean, this kind of work really works for a lot of elements. Not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to work with lucid dreaming in order to get the benefits. You know, lucid dreaming is just a part of it.
Are people offering you platforms to be easily offering you platforms to speak from, to share this kind of ancient but yet unique way of moving through the world?
Well, I spoke at a Cosmic Consciousness in Santa Fe. I think it was 93, the exact year. I have the video on both Facebook and my website. It was a 2-hour presentation. Now, I wasn't a keynote speaker, but amazingly enough, there were keynote speakers talking, and I had probably 800, maybe 1,000 people in that room. It was packed.
Nice.
So that was, you know, the one time that I did a 2-hour long full in front of that many people. All the rest of my teachings have just been private. And also, you know, I moved to Mexico and I lived there for 10 years and I learned a lot from some of the shamans down there. Now, when I was in Mexico, I kind of disconnected from, you know, social media and all of that stuff. And I had my little retreat that I opened. One of the biggest things that I used myself and that I fully believe in and that I build is sensory deprivation or rest, restricted environmental stimuli. I had a really nasty car accident when I was 21, actually on my birthday, and I got whiplash and I got a minor brain injury, nothing major where it was like, you know, but minor brain injuries are very complicated. I tore my psoas muscle. I got major back problems. I mean, I did get hurt really bad. I was not healing. It was just taking forever because the brain injury, you know, they're very complicated because you try to be this person that you were beforehand and you never really can. You have to recognize that you need to be another type of person in order to heal. Well, I was fighting that. Yeah. But I had a flotation. I had my center. I had a center then in Boulder, Colorado. And I had to close the center and I moved back in with my mom. She helped me out. I put my flotation tank in my room. So I used it every day. Every day I used it. I stayed in there, you know, all the time. And because I lost my ability to lucid dream, I lost my ability to sleep, actually. And so I used it every day for a year. And over that year, I was able to cure myself of the brain injury through doing the things that I teach. And you know, restricted environmental stimuli therapy is absolutely amazing. It doesn't matter if you have an experience or not. You know, some people do, some people don't. Some people just lie there and they just see black and that's it. But getting into a natural state of homeostasis is very, very good for your body. With this world, especially these days, with all this stuff going on, a lot of people lose their ability to be in their natural state of homeostasis, which disrupts sleep. It disrupts your health. You're stressed out all the time. You're always running and going. Whereas whether you use a flotation environment or you something similar like dull the lights, put on a head mask, do some meditation, but regularly, and in proper ways, you start to build your ability to get your natural state of homeostasis back, which then relieves the body, relieves the stress, allows you to heal.
Yeah,
Now, I had to go to the extreme with the sensory deprivation because I had the brain injury, and that's where your mind's going. Like, you can't sleep, you can't stop it. You go to a grocery store and you'll look at like something and you don't even know, you'll just burst into tears. It's like, it's just the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
So I use that, and it healed. The doctors obviously no, those never heal. You're gonna have to accept that, but you can.
Yeah. I went into sensory deprivation for 28 days straight.
Oh.
And I can speak to what you're sharing. It's absolutely true. The things that healed, the things I saw, the things that I experienced were otherworldly. And I typically now go into sensory deprivation for at least 12 to 15 days a year in order to reset myself back to I like how you termed that, natural state of homeostasis, which is different for each person.
Yeah.
Wow, you have such a fascinating story. Do you have any plans of getting out there in a bigger way, in a bigger platform, and speaking more about all these different types of tools that you've been developing and all the things that you've read and educated yourself on? Because it seems like this is the perfect time for humanity to know that there's other ways in order to develop yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So, when I first started this, a lot of people, less people were into these kinds of things. I'm 50.
Yeah,
I'm going to turn 50 in May. So, I started teaching when I was, 14, 15, even so up to 20. I kept teaching when I moved to Mexico, and I got married and had 2 children. And, that kind of separated me from really getting on any big stages anymore or doing any of that stuff. But now in my life, I'm in a part where, and that's why I love the bLU Talks. That's why I joined, was to get the message out there and get an opportunity to really start getting on some stages and start showing people how this stuff works and, work with people. And I also love working one-on-one with people. I love working in groups virtually. I absolutely love working together. I'm moving to Panama in probably November, so I'll be doing retreats there. I will be flying back and forth to be doing some retreats in different areas. But yes, definitely. I mean, now's the time for me to do that.
You have so much to offer.
Yeah, I mean, I just got done like the Guardian series of the books. My lighting's kind of weird, but
if you put it in front of you, it's a little better.
Yeah,
there we go. Yeah.
So I wrote 4. There's 4 of them. It's a series, and they're not out yet, but they're coming out as soon as I decide to put them out. I only have 3 of them here. Those are like kind of geared towards the younger audience. Also for adults. Adults love fiction too, but they're geared, young adult. But it's all based on other outerly world, lucid dreaming, healing, and powers and stuff. It's fiction, but everything that I do comes from my dreams. I've either had a dream about it or I've had an experience about it or something. So it all kind of innerly connects together. Whereas the other 3 books that are out on right now, you can get them on Amazon. They're all teaching books, except for The Great Journey. That book. I have 2. I changed the title. It was The 7 Angel, and then I did The Great Journey, What Lies Beyond, because it all has to do with a specific idea of what happens when you die. and it's all based on spiritual alchemy, becoming an angel as a human, using lucid dreaming to become an angel as a human. So that has some fiction in it, but it is very based on a philosophy of the Hermetic philosophy of spiritual alchemy is to be able to use lucid dreaming, meditation, your worldly experiences as well to become an angel as a human is the goal, sort of, you know.
I want to learn more about how to learn to lucid dream, because my husband doesn't dream that often, or he doesn't remember his dreams. But when he does dream, he can dream lucid dreams. But yet I've trained myself to remember my dreams and to use an intention to use my dreams to like work through problems. But I have no ability to lucid dream. And I'm like, I just want...
Yeah, of course you do. Of course you do. You're remembering your dreams is what you're saying. You do remember.
Yeah, easily. I can remember every detail.
No problem. We can get together separately and I can have you lucid in probably less than 4 weeks. I mean, there's two types of lucid dreaming when you're learning. One is mnemonic lucid dreaming. That's a conditioning process. It's a memory process. So it's Stephen LaBerge is a scientist. He proved that lucid dreaming exists. He was one of the first scientists that proved it, and he came up with the mnemonic induced lucid dreaming techniques. And that's based on conditioning, using your dream signs, doing things during the day, doing things before you fall asleep. It has nothing to do with meditation, very little. And you can do some meditation with it, but it's all based on conditioning you. And the first step is writing down 10 dreams and finding dream signs. And then taking, because if you have a dream sign.
This is my dream journal, which I've turned into my notebook.
All you got to do is find 3 or 4. If you can find 5 dream signs, you'll see that they connect to your daily life. Then you just use that to start conditioning yourself to wake up in your dreams. It's really not that hard. You know, you have to go through a certain process. You can't jump right into saying that the next time I'm dreaming, I will wake up in my dreams. You need to go step by step. You have to first remember some dreams, get the dream signs, then condition yourself by asking yourself if you're dreaming when something in your life reminds you that you're of a dream sign. And then you can move on to the next time I'm dreaming out, I will wake up in my dreams. And then you'll start having lucid dreams.
I do know that I have 2 different types of dreams. I have what seems like crazy dreams, which is me processing stuff. And then I have my other dreams, which seem so realistic, but they always seem to be prophetic dreams. So whatever's happening in there is something that's happening in real life.
Mm-hmm.
And then there doesn't seem to be anything in the middle. It's either crazy or something's going on.
Almost all dreams, in one way or another, are there to try to wake you up. In one way or another, they're trying to get you to wake up, to be able to have lucidity. Really should be something that's like taught in schools. Like it should be something in the mainstream. Like it should be taught to kids right away, because it's a very natural thing. And you know, I mean, I'm a very mellow, peaceful guy, but I have a very active dream life. I mean, I will probably remember sometimes up to 10, 15 dreams in a night, you know, regularly, just regular dreams, or I'll get lucid in them if I'm practicing. But my dreams are very violent. My dreams are very, I have one of my dream signs is escaping from prisons. I've escaped from prisons from all over the world, underwater, in space, in different countries, in different, you know, in rocks and you know, all kinds. I also have reoccurring dreams of killing people. And, you know, it's like, okay, well, okay, what's wrong with me? Like, oh, there's something wrong with you because you have, but no, that's not the case. These circumstances are there to wake you up, and not only necessarily wake you up in your dreams, but in your life. If you got some, some pent up emotions and you're dreaming some pretty nasty stuff, it doesn't mean you're a bad guy or there's something wrong with you. It just means that you have some emotions to work through. And the sooner that you start confronting those things in one way or another, the quicker they'll start to change to something else.
That's exactly why I started writing them down, so I could see, okay, what was I trying to process? And then if I can remember it when I'm awake, then I can start to work on the things that I need to process and didn't know that I needed to process.
Why do you go ahead?
Oh, well, if you then take that a little step further and start to connect it to your daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was an astrologer. I do astrology. I've done so many thousands of charts that I'm sorry, but it's too real to say that it doesn't work. A lot of people don't believe in it, and that's okay. But if you bring up your birth chart and start connecting your dreams to your birth chart, and then connect that to what's going on in your life, you can then start to get into that really deep subconscious work. And you don't have to lucid dream to get into that kind of work as well. Although if you can get lucid, it's absolutely amazing. Remember, the brain doesn't know the difference between what you visualize in meditation or experience in a lucid dream, or a dream for that matter, than when you're awake. It absolutely doesn't know the difference. It's been proven. So that's why working on these things is so important, because you can really change a lot of stuff, especially if you get into the practicing every day in the morning before you do anything. This is the perfect time. Just wake up a little bit early and do it. Do something, just half an hour. Once you get into it and you start having lucid dreams, you're never going to want to get out of your bed. No, it's like you're going to be like,
I had a dream like that. I had a dream like that 3 nights in a row, where the place that I went to, there was so much joy and peace in everyone's heart that when I woke up, I was like, no, I've got to go back into this dream. And fortunate for me, I was home from boarding school. So I had the time to do it during Easter vacation. And I did everything to get back into that dream. And I got back into that dream. And when I would wake up, I'd go, nope, I'm going back into that dream. And I still remember, like, viscerally, I still can tap into that feeling. And that was when I was 15 years old. So this is like 40 plus years ago.
It gets harder as you get older. I mean, it just does. We don't lose. We sleep less. Let's put it that way. When you're developing, you sleep more. So you do have more REM cycles. REM goes in a wave. You start out having 15 minutes of REM in your first REM cycle. 60 to 90 minutes later, you'll go through your second one and it'll almost double. 60 to 90 minutes later, it'll almost double. So it's 15 minutes at the very beginning, and it can be almost up to an hour, 8 to 10 hours of sleep later. That happens to everybody. Doesn't matter. But if you're only sleeping a few hours a night, you're going to have less REM. Now, if you starve yourself from REM, it's a very easy way to get into a lucid dream, because your body needs it. So if you starve yourself a little bit and, get up early, stay awake for a little while and go back to sleep. Also using your dreams to get back into it. I mean, so imagine that you can get to a point that you can basically do anything that you want. Anything that you could possibly imagine. And you wake up with this feeling because, you're going to do cool stuff, unless you're like some crazy person that likes to do nasty things. you know, you're going to want to be doing cool stuff. It's stuff that brings adrenaline, stuff that brings excitement, stuff that brings, you know, love. You know, I mean, obviously making love in the dream world is one of the most amazing things. Flying and making love. Yeah, I mean, the things that you can do when you wake up from that, you're raring to go. Your day, then you're starting your day. You're like, all right, let's go. You know, so it has really powerful potentials for a lot of things, to, especially for depression and stress. And, you know, if you combine some of these things with some of the other meditations, then you can get into some real deep healing as well.
I have a personal question for you. So you shared that you figured out how to escape from prisons, and you'd go into your lucid dream and you'd wake up inside of a prison. What do you think the abstract world was trying to show you about yourself?
Well, I'm a very sensitive person. I'm an empath. I feel people.
Mm-hmm.
My parents, you know, I didn't have a perfect grow up. My parents got divorced when I was 7. It was a nasty divorce. No violence or anything. We never got smacked around or anything like that. But, you know, divorce is hard on kids. You know, my father was in a really nasty place for a while. Those kinds of things, I think, you know, really put some emotions inside, feeling trapped. Also, you know, look, I started having these experiences at a very young age. You know, when you start communicating this stuff, a lot of times, especially at that young of an age, to people, and back then things were a little bit different. You know, people think, you know, differently of you, and it's not necessarily like, you know, you're like, okay, I'm this great teacher. At that point, you're just a kid. You know, you haven't even hit puberty. You know, so it's like that kind of, you know, those kinds of feelings can make somebody maybe feel a little bit trapped in that kind of sense. You know, that's kind of where, you know, maybe it comes from. You know, I don't really, it's really hard to tell, you know, because I obviously have interpreted it through my chart. Now that I can see it, it's real obvious,
Mm-hmm.
but that goes all into, you know, 12th house and all of this stuff that, you know, is very complicated. That takes time and to, you know, explain. Mm-hmm. Once you bring up the chart, it's very easy to see the prisons and that kind of things. Yeah, for sure.
Nice. So Jerimiah, we are at the end of our interview. So I want to make sure before we run out of time that we know where to find you and, of course, your favorite way to communicate.
So I have my website, which is hidreamers.com, hidreamers.com. I've been, you know, really, I develop websites and do that stuff. So I've been working really hard to get all my social media up to date before I especially started this and, you know, start doing some of the other talks. So you know, I love to communicate personally. I have, I just put a link on my site that is, there's a bot there that basically, all of my books are in there, all of my information. It'll answer any questions, but you can also go in and hit it, and it'll hit me right on WhatsApp or Messenger. I've completely updated all my Facebook stuff. I didn't touch Facebook for 10 years, but I'm like, all right, I got to make this happen. So I completely updated all of that. You can go to Facebook. You can contact me there. I mean, you know, you can call me up right now on my phone and leave me a message and I'll call you back, you know. So I'm open to anything, but obviously, you know, as things build a little more, you know, texting, emailing, chatting becomes a little bit easier than, you know, spending time, but I'm open to all of that. So
awesome. So I want to call this the end of our main interview. Thank you so much, Jerimiah, for being here with us. I do invite you to stay for a couple more minutes, as I like to do a bit of a roundtable of things that stood out to us. So I'm going to start with you, Christopher. What is something that stood out to you in our conversation today?
Well, a few things. First thing is that when you become aware of who it is you are, it's very easy to honor your path. You know, that's what I took. Like at 14 years old, deciding to write a book and to be so profoundly impacted by something at 14 years old that you already want to share and go through a difficult process. And writing a book isn't the easiest thing in the world. So that really touched me. And then two, the other thing that touched me the most about everything that you shared is your transparency around what it is you were experiencing while you were in your lucid dreams, rather than keep that to yourself, and your ability to not judge yourself with your conscious mind for the abstract experiences you were having while you were in the dream state. I think that speaks to the profound level of development that you have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. You know,
And what was
I've been
something
doing
that
this a
stood
long
out to you?
time.
What was something that stood out to you, Jeremiah?
Well, it's been a wonderful time. I'm looking at the time and it flew by. It feels like 5 minutes. I've had a wonderful time. You know, it's just like we could do this for hours, you know, so that's really great. You know, the message is like, look, this isn't so hard. And brain heart coherence, quantum physics, the field that's around us is real. You know, we can get into synchronicity. You can get into everything that happens for a reason. You can find yourself in a waking dream where you're like, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. This is exactly where, because yeah, that's the whole process, is to get to a point where you're living in a dream. I mean, you know, are we dreaming or are we awake? Is the dream world bigger and more effective than our waking world? Which one has more power over us? You know, these are questions that people have different philosophies on. But as you can see, just from 40 minutes, that it's obvious that the dream world meditation, getting into these states of consciousness, has a profound effect on your life and can be very powerful.
Definitely. One of the things that stood out to me was I didn't know that there were different types of dreaming. You mentioned like yoga body, lucid dreaming, out of body, healing. I didn't know that there were that many. I just thought it was dreaming or not dreaming.
No, dream yoga is a practice where you move from this state of consciousness into the dream world without losing consciousness. So you meditate. And as you meditate, you actually get into the dream. So you never lose consciousness. And it is a wild ride, because when you go into REM, your brain stem squeezes it paralyzes your body. You are paralyzed when you're dreaming. That's why otherwise you'd be walking around and you'd be sleepwalking all the time. So when you're dreaming, your brain stem squeezes it and it paralyzes your body. Now, if you experience that consciously, it's a wild ride. And then you enter the dream and then you never lose consciousness, and then you go fly or do whatever you want. But you hold your intention through the whole thing. So it's not like you wake up in the dream, then you remember your intention, you hold it, and you never lose it because you never lose consciousness. And that's what dream yoga is all about. Now then there's outer body, which is just a step further, which is very intense. But
this is all so cool. And I think what you just mentioned about the spine, that might explain some times when I take a nap and I'm having heart palpitations, that I'll wake up and fall asleep and wake up and fall asleep, but I can't move and I can't say anything, but I'm hyper aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
And like that, to me, it's the scary experience.
Yeah, it can be, but it actually, that's the doorway to getting lucid through dream yoga. You just, you right there, that's the doorway right there, because your body's paralyzed. You if you work at it, and you can then enter the dream. But yeah, you get paralyzed and you're like dreaming, and or you're not, you're awake and you're paralyzed. It can feel quite scary, but it's a natural thing. It happens to all of us. It happens to actually every night, every 60 to 90 minutes throughout the night. So
nice. So this was very interesting. I'm going to invite you to stay with us. We're going to chat a little bit behind the scenes, but I'm just going to end the day together. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for day 5 of bLU Talk's Amplify Your Message. Yeah. Wow. And I want to say thank you to my co-host, Christopher, for being here and asking all your lovely questions. They were very thoughtful and very deep, which is just the way that I like them. So celebrating you.
Thank you guys both. It's been great.
Thank you to everyone who is live and everyone on the replay every single day this week. The next event, which is what I was doing behind the scenes, is July 14th through 18th. Okay. We're same bat channel, same bat time. We're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, and we're on YouTube at 10 a.m. Eastern, and it goes to 1:45-ish Eastern at the end of the day. So I will see you all next time. We're just going to end the day with just a little bit. Christopher, did you see any patterns today in our conversations?
Yeah, the pattern that stood out most to me was, number one, the amount of care that each of the participants had, the sharers, the speakers. And the other thing was that everyone had been through some difficult times and figured out how to transcend those difficulties into and put themselves in a position where they could share and impact positively other people's lives.
Yeah, I listened to a couple today. And yesterday. I listened to probably 2 each day. They were great. They were all great.
One of the patterns that I saw today was this this idea of coming back into the self for healing. And it pairs with one of the patterns that we had all week, Jerimiah, which ties in exactly with what you were talking about, is dreams. We talked about dreams in all kinds of different contexts this whole week. Right. We were talking about the healing. We were talking about what were some of the other ones. Patterns. Yeah, that thing that lights our soul on fire, the inside to out, the courage, the joy. And again, you were talking about joy. I love the patterns of the day and of the week. And those were some of the patterns. So again, thank you to everyone. And we will see you in July. Much love. I'm going to click the end stream, and then I'll chat with you both behind the scenes.